supported by Councilor Johnson. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Congratulations. Okay, the next item on the agenda is item number 4, and they are in your packet. The rules and the procedures on 4A is adopt the resolution regarding the guidelines for the city council meetings, the public hearings, and the committee meetings, and you have a resolution in your packet. So I open that up for discussion and from any other councilor with respect to the resolution as proffered forward in your packet. Councilor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple of things that I wanted to bring up was, and I have some notes here so I wouldn't forget anything. When we use Robert's rules as a guideline, I just want to clarify that making a motion, it's not required that you wait to be called on to make a motion, that motions can be made at any time, and that you don't need to actually even vote for your motion, because the motion is to bring it forward to have the discussion. So there can be a time where there's a motion and a second, and it fails complete by everybody voting no, but for the discussion part of it. So that was one of the things I wanted to talk about for sure. And I see that there's the order of speaking is presented, excuse me, in the resolution. The other part that I wanted to talk about was possibly, I bring this up every time we reorganize just as a point of record, but the possibility of moving the committee of the whole meetings to a 1 o'clock on Tuesday for people like me who have to work, being able to schedule a morning shift and working until noon with a definite endpoint is something. So as I always bring that up, I bring that up yet again for possible discussion. And that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. In your packet is the proposed resolution. Councilor Johnson brought up a couple of points about the Roberts Rules of Order. I guess I'll comment about that. We try to follow it as a guideline. There are certain circumstances in which we may not follow the rules of order, the guideline, but it's at the behest and at the approval of the city council itself in order to maintain a rule of order. As we discussed through the process, it's just good procedure for somebody to turn on their light and for the mayor to call upon that person to whatever make a motion. Because if that's not the case, then somebody can make a motion and then another person makes a motion. So I think somebody should be recognized for whatever statement they want to make with respect to that motion. That's my personal perspective as well. And we do follow Robert's Rules of Order as a guideline. I think we've done well doing so. Does anybody have any other questions, comments, or regarding the issue from Councilor Johnson regarding following the guidelines of Robert's Rules of Order? And should somebody want to make a motion without being called upon? The Robert's Rules of Order does give that latitude, but I would like to see if we could maintain a rule of order and process as we move forward, so each councilor has an opportunity, each elected person has an opportunity to speak and make the motion in conjunction with that. So, Councilor Beyondich.
Thank you. And I also, I don't know if I'm just being old school, but I do appreciate having a light on our microphone, turning the light on and being called upon. And that's just me. But as long as we're talking about meetings, I have also voiced an opinion on going to a committee structure and trying to hold all meetings on our committee of the whole day. Having a committee structure doesn't mean you have to sit here for every committee. You can come and go, but that way we're doing our business on one day and we're not being pulled in on other days of the week and other times where we have to make adjustments to our schedules. So I just feel that we're here on a Tuesday for a meeting, and personally, I like to delve in a little bit deeper on some of the things of interest. And if it doesn't interest you as being on that committee, you're free to leave. But it eliminates having that information. If I go down and ask for information and then having to come back, and it has to be reiterated again to the entire council so everybody can understand it. So that's my my thought on going back to more of a committee structure. I'm not sure how the rest of the council feels about that, but it would block out one full day. We're here on a Tuesday, sometimes it can be 2 hours, sometimes it can be 5 or 6 hours. But that way, as a committee, we can look at things a little closer and not get fidgety and angry that the meetings are going long. We could come and go as our committees meet. So that's just my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Beyondich. And holding meetings on Tuesday, we kind of do that in the committee of the whole structure as we do now. But in order to delve into, like drill down, as Councilor Paulson likes to refer to those specific issues, is prudent to us to be able to do that, to have these committee structure meetings on Tuesdays. There would become a time where, under emergency circumstances, when our city administrator or somebody else has come to the council meeting looking for some special consideration regarding something from building and grounds or something from public safety, street and alley, that we may have some time to call a special meeting from time to time in order to accomplish that instead of waiting till the following Tuesday. However, as a regularly scheduled course of action, we could certainly do that. We couldn't see to do that structure, and it does tie up our city staff one whole day. They may have other things that are scheduled within the course of their duties and responsibilities that may take them away from the structure for the entire day. But I think that maybe an adjustment can be made, and I would defer to Britt. If we were to do this on Tuesdays, is there a way to reschedule and block out the time so that people know that every other Tuesday, twice a month, that we're going to have these committee meetings, and if they have to go all day, they have to go all day? So the question for me is, you have a committee of the whole structure. If you have the committee structure involved in that as well, that would change the way we operate our committee of the whole meeting.
Correct. And the reason you guys went to the committee of the whole structure was that all of the council wanted to put input on these items. If you go to just the committee structure, just those 3 council members are the ones that get to vote on those items in that committee. So when we went to the committee of the whole, then it became all 7 of you got to vote on the items that were under those topics, not just the 3 of them.
In order to accomplish those goals and objectives and address the issue that Councilor Beyondich has brought up, we could still have these structured as the committee of the whole meeting itself. When it comes to building and grounds, you know, it's a committee of everybody that makes that decision, and you drill down and talk about however long it takes. If you have to take 2 or 3 breaks over the course of the day, then we would accomplish that. Is that kind of the way you're getting at, Councilor Beyondich?
It is, and I do like that all of us are here for that. I think my frustration sometimes comes in the special meetings that are called, and they're at different times, different days, and as Councilor Johnson stated, when people have a working schedule, to be on this council, you have to be very flexible and be able to work around that, where if you could block one day.
And I think I think we can accomplish that, accomplish both of those items, keeping the committee whole structure in place, address the issue with respect on Tuesday. So if it takes us 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, or the whole day in which to get through the agenda, we are addressing each individual piece: the finance, the building and grounds, the public safety, street and alley, and we're discussing each one of those issues at length and coming into a determination, a consensus to move forward to the following council meeting. Is that kind of what you're looking at?
And I'm okay with that. As long as we know that these meetings can last anywhere from 2 to 8 hours, and not get frustrated and hurry on to the next subject. If things are not clear at that at the committee of the whole, where we have our questions answered and we have time to do that without being hurried, I guess I'm okay with that. But to try and keep these in a 2, 3, 4 hour time frame, and then if we're not done, you know, we have to accommodate that. And I'm okay. That's why I said going to a committee structure, and I'll use myself for an example. I can take all the time I need to get the answers that are there without the frustration. or being hurried along. I just want to make sure that everybody on this council has that ample time to do that. And if we can possibly cut out some of our special meetings and have those addressed at the committee of the whole meeting, or have it brought before a council meeting. So we're not having meetings on different days and different times. I mean, if we can structure this a little bit better. It's hard, and I know I talked to people before the election, and the reason they don't want to run is it is a huge time commitment, and their jobs won't allow them all the times that we have our special meetings. So I'm just trying to corral things so we're meeting less and getting more accomplished. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councilor Bionich, and I personally concur. If we have the meetings on Tuesdays, keep the structure in place. If it takes a longer period of time to make sure we take care of that particular issue in that particular committee, we can certainly do that. But there are going to be times where there might be an emergency meeting that needs to be called for those 3 committee members to come forth, whatever it is, personnel, whatever. But it would be rare in that regard because the majority of it would be done on a Tuesday where we're dealing into that. And if in fact that this has to come up, if it can wait till Tuesday, we'll certainly discuss it there like we have in the past. But if it's an emergency meeting, there comes a time where maybe our city administrator has to call an emergency meeting. But to reduce it significantly, I concur that one meeting in a committee of the whole meeting when people can come and speak on that specific subject, whether, so they want to come at 1 o'clock to do this committee or 1 o'clock for that, whatever they can do so, and we can still accomplish the business of the city. So are you comfortable, is anyone comfortable with the structure the way it is, but at the same time ensuring that we have the committee of the whole meeting in such a way where everyone will have the opportunity to speak? Now, there are people who work and might have to block off that entire day on Tuesday. Sometimes the committee of the whole meeting will be an hour, sometimes 3 hours, sometimes longer, which has been in the past. And we want to make sure that we are able to discuss and resolve and come to a consensus in that regard. So, Councilor Motley.
Sorry, first time. I'm all for trying to keep everything on Tuesdays as much as possible. I was talking to Julianne last night. The hardest thing is going to be me with a full-time job trying to get things off, which I've already chatted with my employer, and they're going to be as accommodating as they can. So I'm all for everything on Tuesdays as much as possible.
Thank you, Councilor Motley. Anyone else? Anyone else have a question regarding this, the structure of that's laid out in the packet right now? Councilor Johnson.
I would agree. The whole idea of 1 o'clock was so that we could block out the rest of the day. But if we're going to really focus on having committee meetings on Tuesdays, that also works better for me because of being able to pick up a half a day sub job or not. So being able to do that, and if we can really focus on that, that would meet my needs as well. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councilor Johnson. So that's the rules of procedure regarding adopting the resolution regarding the guidelines for the city council meetings, the public hearings, and the committee meetings. And so we need a motion to approve that. So we're looking for a motion, unless there's any other discussion from the council regarding the resolution that's in your packet to approve the guidelines for the city council meetings, public hearings, and committee meetings. Councilor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to address on the council agenda, item A, agenda deadline, item number 1. We all know that we need to submit them to Pam on time, but have we ever had any rules like what can be submitted? I know in the past, like I've requested and then maybe it wasn't the right time, so it gets put off. Like, do we have any rules on submission if we want to submit an agenda item as a council member?
Yeah, I think that the guideline is, I think has been, this has been the guideline, that if you want to put something on the committee, a whole agenda, we notify our city clerk, Pamela Bean, and of course she informs our city administrator. So if anybody has to be invited or any documents have to be prepared for that particular item that's going on the agenda, we can certainly do that. And you'd like to have that prior to Friday by noon?
Thursday.
Thursday by noon, excuse me. Thursday by noon. That does make sense?
Absolutely. So, and then council members can add items to the agenda if they email the city clerk. Is that correct?
The city charter says that the mayor sets the agenda and 2 council members can set.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's the clarification I think I was looking for.
The mayor can will approve or not approve of the agenda item. I don't think in my tenure as the mayor I've ever not approved an agenda item somebody want to bring forward, as long as our city clerk and our city administrator is aware and can prepare.
Very good. Thank you so much.
Thank
There
you.
may be times, like you mentioned, where the staff is preparing something, so we just don't get it on that next agenda. We just want to make sure we get the information before the.
But you may proffer something, or 2 councilors may proffer for.
Absolutely, at any
Right,
time,
so-
yeah, definitely give us a call. Like I said, we might need time to prepare the items, but we'll definitely get it on the agenda.
And Pam would prefer that it be done by noon on Thursday so that she can prepare the agenda, maybe investigate or get the documents that might be needed to discuss it at that particular meeting. Counselor Johnson?
That brings up a thought for me. If we put it on, maybe it would be prudent that our names go after, if a counselor asks to have it on, then when we get to the agenda, then we would know that it would be us that had done that, instead of every once in a while that happens and we all look around like, who needs to talk about this first? So that would just be a suggestion, is that if a counselor does that, maybe it'd be prudent to put their name after it.
Well, that works. Okay. Any other questions, comments about the resolution that's being proffered regarding the adoption of the regarding guidelines for the city council meetings, public hearings, and committees? Seeing no other requests for comment or information, I look for the elected body for an adoption of this resolution regarding item 4 on the agenda. Move to approve by Councilor Freely. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Councilor Paulson. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item 5 is the standing committees of Council Committee of the Whole, the commission liaisons, and other commission boards. I asked Pam to send these out to everybody. There are certain elected body personnel who are on certain committees, standing committees, and those kind of things. With the vacation of the seat by Councilor Baraboo and the newly elected city councilor Liz Motley, I made some adjustments to some of these. These are suggestions moving forward. Traditionally, the mayor has made these appointments. I did have Pam send it out. If you have any special requests or you can't serve on a committee, you have some conflicts, please let me know, and then I will try to make those adjustments. So those of you who did respond, I did try to do my due diligence and try to accomplish those committees. So I look for questions, comments about that. Councilor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. I would request that Councilor Beyondich be the chair of the insurance committee, as I am chair of buildings and grounds. That would just make it a little easier moving forward.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Johnson. Councilor Beyondich, are you willing to become the chair of the insurance committee?
Yes.
Okay, so I will duly note that, we'll make that change, that Councilor Johnson will assume the role as the alternate on the insurance committee, and Councilor Beyondich will assume the role as the chairperson of that committee. Thank you. Anything else? Anybody else? Everybody's okay with those? Councilor Motley.
So obviously, it looks like I'll be the liaison for the public utilities and the Parks and Rec. And one of the meetings for the public utilities is every 4th Monday at 3:30. Is it ever negotiable if I talk to them that they'd ever be willing to sway the time from 3:30 to maybe later, or is that set in stone normally?
And the public utilities, thank you, Councilor Motley. The public utilities is an entity all on itself. They don't report to the city council. They are an autonomous entity, and they hold their meetings at 3:30. If in the event that you can't make it, your alternate will go to that meeting and provide you with the information.
Okay, so it's always So solidly set at 3:30 probably.
It normally is. If you're unable to attend, that's no problem. I can certainly do something else.
Oh, I'll try. We'll see.
They have set their meetings at different times before, so I do think if you go to the reorganizational meeting that they'll be having this month and let them know that it would work better for you to be later.
Would that be
They
correct?
adjust it based on who's on their commission, what it works best for them.
Is
So
that-
they're very, I think they'd be very receptive to,
Is that Greg French? Who I'd be-
yes,
Okay,
yes.
sounds good, thanks.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Britt. Thank you, Councilor Motley. Did that work? Okay, thank you. Okay. Okay. There is a list of the times in which these boards meet, and if you can't make it, the alternative can show up. If you can't serve on one of the committees, or the alternate cannot serve on any of these committees, please let Pam know, and then she'll contact me, and I will attend in your place if you can't attend. So I'll be the alternate if there's a conflict. Is there anything else anybody wanted to add with respect to this? Councilor Freelieb?
So quick question, street and alley, building grounds, insurance personnel are all as needed rather than regularly scheduled?
Yes, and in anticipation that there will be longer committee of the whole meetings, those members who are on that committee would get a packet of information based upon what's needed to be done. So if a committee needs to be done outside of the committee whole structure, there's an emergency meeting that needs to be called because there's a contractor or there's some kind of issue regarding that committee that needs to be addressed before the Tuesday committee of the whole meeting, that committee would meet.
And so that packet then, if I'm chairing that committee, would be provided to me by Mr. Rosfit or Pam? Okay,
By Pam.
all right, thank you.
Yes. Thank you. Okay. So can we do this in one motion, A, B, and C? Okay, if there are no other questions or comments under the commissions, the Standing Council Committee of the Whole, the Commission Liaison, the other committees and boards, if everybody is comfortable with serving on those, I will look for a motion to approve of those as presented with the one change of moving Councilor Beyondich to the chair of the Insurance Committee with Councilor Johnson, the secondary. Okay, no other lights, no other comments, questions, or concerns, looking for a motion from the elected body.
So moved for approval.
Move to approve with the addendum and a correction. Is there support? Support by Councilor Barnzelli. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carries. Thank you, everybody. This is the last item on the reorganizational meeting agenda for January 3rd, 2023. Thank you for everybody for your flexibility. You're willing to serve on these committees and commissions. I know it's a lot of work, and so we'll try to do the best we can to move the city forward and conduct the business as professional as we can. So thank you, everybody. No other items to come before the reorganizational meeting agenda. We'll adjourn the reorganizational meeting agenda. The time is 9:30. We stand adjourned. Okay, we'll now call order the Committee of the Whole meeting. The Committee of the Whole meeting will call to order. Today's date is Tuesday, January 3rd, 2023. The time is 9:31 a.m. We have some appearances before us and a full agenda as well, as we normally do. So I'm going to turn this portion of our Committee of the Whole meeting over to our City Administrator, Britt C. Bennis. Britt?
Thank you. The first item on the agenda is an appearance by Aaron Johnson for a request to purchase RLS 21, which we affectionately call the Mulliver property in Midway.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Johnson, would you please come forward? And if you would turn the microphone on to the green, and please state your name for the record, and welcome to the Committee of the Whole meeting.
Thank you. My name is Aaron Johnson. This is my first time doing anything like this, so I apologize if I don't know all the protocols. Yes, I am interested in acquiring RLS number 21. I would like to start a small orchard and berry farm out there. It's one of the better properties I've seen in the area. I do see that the city purchased the property in 2019 for $90,000, and that's obviously a little outside of what I was looking for. So I don't know how this exactly would work. I did have a packet I made that I could hand out, or however that would work, that would show some options for the city retaining a portion of that property if it would like to do any further development out there.
Okay, so what we'll do, Mr. Johnson, we'll pass out your packet for you. We'll listen to your presentation. We'll likely have to take this under advisement and take a look at it and discuss it at that next committee hall meeting while we do some more research about it.
Okay.
And do that, so, but please, thank you for this information. Please continue with your presentation.
So my purchase budget is about $20,000. There is some flexibility in that if we need. As you can see on page 1, and I do have extras if we need more copies of it.
Go ahead.
The first would be the city retaining the southern portion that would allow Moore Drive to extend all the way out to some of the infrastructure that's at the end of Moore Drive. Page 2 would allow the city to retain Moore Drive and the extension of Sunrise to allow more development out there. And then page 3 is kind of and I apologize for the lack of refinement on it, a kind of proposed layout for how I would lay out the property.
Okay, very good. Thank you. So we'll take a look at this information that you provided. We'll have to discuss this at length. You know, this is a preliminary proposal. It's a significant request. Obviously, the investment that the city has made has been, the goal and objective, frankly, has been to take a look at it as some kind of a revenue-generating, tax-paying entity for a variety of reasons. And I think it was purchased in 2019 in anticipation for some development that would go along with the new school that was being erected and who is currently being erected here. But we are looking at all options that are available to us, and this is just one of the options that we would take a look at based upon what's the best use for this property.
Absolutely, I do understand that.
So I'm gonna go around the room and see if any other comments or questions. I'll go from right to left this time. First, Councilor Johnson.
Mayor, thanks, Aaron, for coming in. Good to see you again. I like the concept and the idea of utilizing that property. One of the challenges is what's underneath the ground there. But I do have a question for Britt. Has there been other interest in the last 3 years on the property?
Yeah, we've been approached by 3 other people that were interested in buying portions of the property that we have not committed to selling yet.
Okay, so I think there's a bigger, as the mayor alluded to, a bigger process here that we need to look at. I know that there different people want to do different stuff up there, and my hope would be to be able to have some taxable property up there. Right now, it's just literally sitting there not doing anything for us. So I appreciate you coming in with an actual idea as opposed to just wanting to buy it and not telling us. And I do think this is probably going to be probably a committee meeting because of the nature of it. But thank you very much for coming in and being willing to ask some good questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Johnson. Councilor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you for coming and showing such a neat interest in what your concept is. I think it's very awesome.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm new to the Iron Range. I've only been up here about 10 years. But from what I've learned from the history, back in the location days, having a large garden in your front yard and exchanging food was something that was very important to the early folks around here. And I kind of look at this as a continuation of that and being able to bring those things to the farmer's market to be able to share.
Really great. I do just have a question on, I don't know if this would be for Britt. Do you remember what the original acreage was when the city purchased that? I know you've got acreage broken out here,
It's about 14 acres right in that area.
14?
Yes.
Okay, and then on your, on the last page where you've got orchard, you've got your sample of where the
Yes.
placement would be, you've got 9.04 acres, so that's just a portion of that total property, is that?
That is the square that is 9.4. According to the County Land Explorer, the whole thing that the city owns is 20.4 acres. So I have the portions on the first 2 pages where the city would be able to retain those properties. I have those acreages that the city would retain of that 20.4 of the whole, which I realize some is probably unplatted roads, like more in Sunrise Drive.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate that very much.
Absolutely.
Mr. Johnson, I have a couple of questions. First of
Absolutely.
all, it's a great idea.
Thank you.
I think we have the community gardens, we have the Rutabaga Project, we have the Iron Range Partnership for Sustainability. We have all those things that are provided and they're well used. We have those kind of things. I don't know, frankly, until we discuss this further, whether this is the appropriate area to have this, but we'll discuss that and promise you we'll give it our due diligence. If not, I think we still need to take a look at some other property in Virginia that's available that we could avail to you
Okay.
to provide this, because you have a great idea. This
I
is
appreciate that.
sustainability. It's about, whole foods, natural, growth of, no processed food and those kind of things. And you have it kind of laid out in a form where I really kind of like that. It's the berry patch, it's the orchards themselves, and it's the ability to find sustainable. So my last question would be that if you were to build something like that, Virginia, we were to find a way in which to provide you an opportunity to do so, what would you do with the product?
I do intend on selling a portion, the majority of it at the farmer's market. I do intend, if it's possible, to donate 10% to local homeless shelters, food shelves, pretty much anything I can make available. I've worked in community action for 7 years now, so helping the community as a whole is something I'm very passionate about, and I'd like to continue that within this business
Well,
framework.
that's a great mantra about partnerships, community and private partnerships and business partnerships, about helping the community at the same time, having a revenue generating stream for some good quality, food, because we don't have any farms in the city of Virginia. so-
Absolutely.
But I think it's imperative that we take a look at this seriously, see if this works. If it doesn't, try to find another way in which to help accommodate your request.
Oh, I definitely appreciate that, and anything we can do would be appreciated, especially with the orchards. Most of those take even as many as 5 to 6 years to really start to produce. So I definitely respect the fact that would have to be a meeting and would have to be discussed, but if we could start this growing season, that would definitely be something that would be advantageous for the long-term growth.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Johnson. Counselor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. I would make a motion to refer this back to staff and have them work with Mr. Johnson and also looking at the other offers on that property to see if it's time to move forward.
A motion by Counselor Johnson to direct staff to review this project. What was the exact motion made by Counselor Johnson?
Moved by Counselor Johnson to refer to staff the proposed project for the purchase of RLS 21 and to also review the proposals previously
proposals
reviewed.
Okay, that's the motion by Counselor Johnson. Is there support?
Support for discussion.
Support by Counselor Freely for discussion. Further discussion. Counselor Freely.
Aaron, have you taken the opportunity to look at any other areas in the city that might be accommodating to this plan besides this property here?
I have looked, it didn't look like there was a ton that were large enough. I am looking to have at least 5 acres, and that from just what was available on the city's website, I didn't see anything else that really fit that criteria that wasn't predominantly wetland or in the middle of residential areas.
Thank you.
Because with that, I would like to have bees for pollination of the orchards and the berry patch. And just with respect to allergies and people not necessarily wanting their next door neighbor to have, a couple beehives, I did want to have it somewhere less accessible.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the council? Mr. Johnson, thank you very much for coming in. The motion is to direct staff to do that, so we're going to have to vote on that right now. So it's moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Your proposal will be referred back to our staff. We'll take a look at it and find the appropriate way in which to try to address this issue and maybe look at some alternatives if this doesn't work out.
I appreciate everybody's time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Britt?
Next item on the agenda is an appearance by Lieutenant John Swenson regarding an update on the Shop with a Cop.
This is Lieutenant Swenson, our Community Development Director, or not Community, our Community Resource Officer, is doing an outstanding job. A lot of good compliments about what you're doing. Chief, thank you for putting this Resource Officer program together for us, and it has been working out very well. Thank you for your partnerships with the private sector and with some Range Mental Health and the others, and now the Shop with a Cop program. So welcome to the City Council Chambers, Lieutenant Swenson, and we'll look forward to your presentation.
Oh, thank you. It's not much of a presentation, more of a,
Is the light on?
yep, it's great.
Very good, thank you.
So, just want to say good morning, Mayor and council members. Welcome. Just kind of wanted to update everybody. This is the third year that I'm going on with a community outreach officer, working with Shop with a Cop. And this event can't actually move forward without donations from the private sector and from people and organizations that actually contribute to this. So kind of wanted to recognize that and then kind of tell a little bit about the process that goes into it. It's quite a lengthy ordeal. But some of the donors that constantly donate are like AUA, Target, Walmart, the 4 unions, police, fire, ASME, and MAPE, are a huge part in having these continual donations coming in every year. Helps grow this event into something that's astronomical. I love it. I look forward to it every year. So we do something like this and have been a part of something like this for at least 10 years that I've been here, but if not longer. But I don't think it's ever been quite this large. So like this year, we were able to actually give Christmas presents to approximately 80 to 85 children. The following years, we've been able to actually give Christmas presents to about 120, was last year, and the year before was about 110. So, and like I said, none of this could actually come full round unless it was actually from people in the community that actually donate. So I really greatly appreciate it. I greatly appreciate even like my friends at the library that help wrap the presents so I can go and dress up like Blue Santa Claus and deliver the presents. So it's quite the experience. The selection process for this, I don't actually like go handpick names. So I have organizations like the schools, AUA, social services, and others that will actually give me nominated list of children, and then from there I make my list. So that's how it kind of works.
Yeah, thank you. I'd just like to make a couple comments, if I may.
But
I want to say thank you very much. Congratulations. You did outstanding work. See me sometime in the course of the next week. I do have a couple of organizations that would have liked to have and will next year donate to Shop with a Cop. So let me know when you have time, and they'll gladly, generously donate. I belong to a couple organizations that have asked which to do so. All we need is a letter from you. And to the Friends of the Library, I mean, you do so much for our community, and this is another, volunteer effort on the part of people to help bring a good Christmas, good holiday season, good spirit and hope and faith and understanding and for all these kids who need some guidance over the course of the holiday season. So if we can do this like they do in other communities, it's amazing. And what you did and what you have accomplished, I take my hat off to you.
Well, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I appreciate the opportunity. I mean, we reach out to children over in Evelyn, Gilbert, Mountain Iron. I even had the family up in Embarrass that we were able to help out. So we don't just take ownership of the children here in Virginia. It's a whole community that we actually take care of. So.
Yeah, and it's based on need, not on geographic location. So,
Absolutely.
so just one more question: Who helps you out with this? I mean, obviously the Friends of the Library who wrap all the presents and give you the opportunity to become Blue Santa. So what? Who are the other organizations? I know you have support from the Chief Mattson in your department. Who else is part of this committee moving forward? And when you after answer that, I think we should put something in the paper thanking everybody and listing them all down there. Who supported it? Thank you very much for your generosity, and for the exception of those who want to remain anonymous. But
As far as
Lieutenant?
are you asking about like the donations or?
yeah, I mean, some of the organizations, you listed some of the organizations that donate, but behind the scenes, those who really we should be recognizing probably don't want to be recognized, to help you with this whole process. Obviously, the Friends of the Library and yourself and our staff with the city of Virginia and in your department. Are there other organizations that reach out and help you with this process?
Outside of actually donating money or donating in-store causes, and having the library as far as helping me wrap presents, it's all on me. And, as well as the officers here that work. So, stuff in the ambulance, what the fire department does, greatly contributes to the funds there and helps set that cheer. But when it comes down to actually pulling in the lists and stuff like that, it all comes down to me.
Well, we appreciate all your efforts, Lieutenant, and keep up the good work. How about that office over there in the mall has, I know we renewed that contract. Rockstep has been very generous in providing space for you. And so is that adequate space for you?
It's absolutely adequate. In fact, next month we'll be talking a little bit more in detail about that, and also talking about any questions as far as the CCRT team that I'm in charge of as well. So I'll be able to bring some facts and figures on that.
And I think Britt and I have a meeting next week with the Range Mental Health Center. As part of that topic will be discussion how the cooperation between the city and Range Mental Health can move forward. And you've been a really good conduit for relationships with that organization. So thank you for that. Any other questions, comments from the elected body? Councilor Freely.
Yeah, John, I want to say I really admire and respect your engagement and outreach with the youth and the communities that surround our city and in our city and with our schools. I think it's absolutely imperative to have that kind of connection and relationship with the youth and the community from your standpoint. So thank you for what you do.
Thank you, Councilor Freely. Thank you, Lieutenant. Appreciate it. Keep up the good work.
Thank you for your time.
Take care. Thanks for coming forward.
The next item on the agenda is review the request to purchase the floor scrubber for the Iron Trail Motors Event Center.
Our Park and Rec Director, Brian Silber, who is juggling a lot of balls on the court, so welcome.
Morning, Council. Thank you. In your packet, you will see that we have two quotes for ride-on floor scrubber. In a little background on our current floor scrubbers, currently we have 2 floor scrubbers. A maroon ride-on floor scrubber that was purchased around 2017 that was utilized in the miners. We also have a blue stand-on floor scrubber that was purchased probably around 2012 or 2013 that moved to the event center from the miners. Back in May of last year, the council approved us to purchase a walk-behind floor scrubber that we are still waiting on. Due to production issues, it has not arrived yet. Both the blue floor scrubber and the maroon floor scrubber that we have had have become inoperable. I did email you guys about those. The blue one is still in the repair shop. Last week, we did receive the maroon ride-on one back. They said they had fixed it. We got on it, rode it for 7 minutes, and it shut itself down again. Obviously, 7 minutes is not enough time to make a significant dent in the amount of floor space that we have at the event center. So we've been looking at different options. We would like to purchase this ride-on floor scrubber. The one that we are proposing that we purchase is from Brenco, which is a company out of Fargo, North Dakota. They currently have this floor scrubber in-house, and as soon as we purchase it, they would be able to deliver it for us. The other floor scrubber that we have a quote from is from Dalco, which is a company that we have worked with many times in the past. It's actually who we've purchased all of our other floor scrubbers from. Their quote actually happens to be a little bit more. That is in page 10 of your packet. Page 11 of your packet is a sheet that details information about the floor scrubber that we are actually wanting to purchase. This floor scrubber does have a roller underneath of it rather than the disc pads. All of our current floor scrubbers have the disc pads that basically polish the floor in a circular motion as it goes. This one has a disc pad that is rotating this way, so it also does some sweeping motion while it is doing the scrubbing motion. This is a floor scrubber that is utilized in many arenas, and from what we understand, we have not test drove it, but from what we understand, this floor scrubber would also work on the surface of the walking track.
All right, well, we'll have a couple of questions. We'll go around the room. My question is it like the ones that are in these big box stores where they could have an automated mode where they can automatically go around and like the, what do you call it, the Wanda floor sweeper in your house, or it doesn't have that automated?
It does not have the option to be automated. However, if we were to double the purchase price, we could get that, but I'm a little too conservative spending money to want to request that. In addition, from an operation standpoint, for our facility having the automated ones, the best time to use that would be overnight. We would then have to be propping every door open, which kind of defeats the purpose of us having the doors closed for security purposes.
Well, I thought I'd ask that question to negate anybody else asking that question. So thank you for that. Councilor Johnson.
Thank you, Brian. Is this one wider than the current? So it looks bigger in the picture. Is it?
It is a few inches wider than the current maroon one. We could go wider than that. However, if we go too wide, then we cannot get it into the doors or through the doors into the locker rooms. As you know from your experience, hand mopping the locker rooms is a great upper body workout with the flooring that we have in there. We would much prefer to use a mop machine in the locker rooms for the simple fact that My opinion is a mop machine does a better job cleaning because it's putting down the water, scrubbing, and then sucking the water back up. If you use a hand mop, essentially you end up moving dirty water around. So we would like to have a mop machine that we are able to get into those rooms easily.
And hand mopping also gets caught on the bolts underneath.
It does get caught on the bolts, in addition to sticking to the floor because it is a textured floor.
This model looks like much better than the one you're currently using that I got to write on.
It is.
And I think that the best part of this is that it's deliverable within the next couple weeks once it's
Yes.
approved. So you have my support on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we go to the money manager, I want to talk to Counselor Beyondich.
Is there a warranty, or how long does a warranty last on this new one?
This one has a 1-year full warranty, and then the drive motors and everything have a 3-year warranty.
Okay, and yes, I will turn to Sherry and ask about the money. So if it's available now, how would it be paid for?
Mayor, Council. Well, I'm going to ask Brian a few questions. First of all, you said we placed in one in order in May.
In May.
We have not received it. So that
Correct.
would be canceled, correct?
If that is the desire of the council, we could cancel that
How
one.
much was that one?
Want to say that one was 8,000 or 9,000?
Okay, so if we canceled that, then we can put that money towards this one. And then would there be trade-ins on our old one, or are they shot?
2 other ones are shot, so right now we have
Yeah.
0. So Brian's trying to get 2 to replace the 2 that we had, because right now we have 0.
Yeah.
From 2 to 0 in the same 2 weeks, so it's,
Shot meaning no good.
Good.
Please continue, Counselor Beyondich.
So we're actually, I mean, we've approved one.
One.
And that's the one you're asking about.
And it's not here yet.
And that one was 8,000, 9,000?
Shooting off the top of my head, yes, I do not have those figures in front of me. I know it was approved back in May.
And this one is coming in at 18?
Yes. 18,250.
So where in the budget do we have that money?
It would be coming out of the Iron Trail Motors under his equipment.
Or would we be able to put it under the capital bond purchase that we are?
That is a possibility. I'm a little concerned about is the first one that we're waiting, it's going to be almost a year here in May. Is that, I mean, can you get 2 of the other? Is there 2 available now?
I have not checked on if we could get 2 of the other.
And cancel that one? I mean, that's just sitting there and that was money from, So yes, we
capital
could,
bond will not be till May,
Okay.
so that will not work for this one availability-wise. But the other one would, if it arrives after May.
And we're waiting on one. This one is available now.
we need it now.
Please continue, Counselor Beyondich.
Can you tell me the difference on, because the price is, it's such a big gap on the price difference between the 2 scrubbers? What is the main difference?
They are comparable scrubbers. They're both the same size, the same style, design. My guess is the company that we are proposing to go with, since they have not had a relationship with us in the past, they're cutting us a good deal. You will see the quote on page 9 is several $1,000s less than the list price on page 11 of your packet.
Okay, so I always come back to the money and concerns about where this is, and I know we've talked about capital outlay before on, in there. So I guess that's my biggest concern is where is the money coming from? And how are we going to pay for things?
Sherry, our Finance Director.
I would say there's a need. There's a need here that you need to start cleaning that building. You do not have anything to clean that building with. So definitely, I can see getting one now, and then we're still waiting for that other one. Like I said, that other one could be under the bond, the capital bond. That one could be paid through that. But now, yes, this one would come under his equipment in his budget.
So what you're saying is that if we were to approve this purchase of this machine, we can get it immediately, so we have a scrubber to take care of the maintenance at the Intermores Event Center. And then when the second one comes in, if it does come in, that may or could be placed on the capital equipment bond. Is that correct? Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay, Counselor Bionich?
Thank you. And I would hate to cancel that other one because of the price. I mean, I don't think we'll be able to find another scrubber at the price that we have this one locked into, the first one. So they have not indicated that that price will go up.
Yes, prices, as of the first of the year, went up by at least 5%.
The one that we already have ordered,
Yes.
that price has gone up.
Not for us, because we already ordered it, but if we were to order that same scrubber again today, it would be at least 5% higher.
Okay, that clarifies my desire to stay with that first one, even if it still takes us a little bit longer because of the price of it. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So the need is immediate. The first one, we don't know when it's coming. The second one is available right now. So in the event that we make a decision here today, that if we were to approve this purchase, we would get that immediately so you can start cleaning this Intermores Event Center. When the secondary one comes in, if we're locked, because we're locked into that price, we need 2 scrubbers anyway. So one of them, the one that comes in or whatever, can be could potentially be placed on the capital equipment bond that we are considering, but that won't be till May.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. I did go back, Brian, and I found it was on May 24th when the council approved it. And so just to clarify, it says approve the purchase of the walk-behind floor scrubber in the amount of $15,412.68. Is that the same?
Yes, that would be it.
The one, okay. So this one is $3,000 more approximately. And then it also says, and the IMOP scrubber in the amount of $5,136. Did we receive the IMOP?
We have the iMop in hand. We use that for scrubbing under the benches, corners in the bathrooms, use it some in the stands of the bleachers. So yes, we have had that one.
The IMOP is being utilized, received and utilized.
Yes,
And then, okay, so I'm just trying to understand the delivery, the model that we approved from Dalco, is that the same one that you're talking about here, or is this an upgraded?
the one that we purchased is a walk-behind. We did not go with the ride-on one from Delco because it was around $24,000. We also liked the fact that this walk-behind one, we had it in-house and test drove it, so to say, and we liked how it performed on the
that, yeah.
walking track.
Yep, and so do you want, is the request one walk behind and one ride on?
Yes.
Is that what you,
Yeah, we would like to go ahead and purchase this ride-on one to essentially replace the 2 that have gone down. And as we wait on this walk-behind one, that way we would have 2 in-house. Obviously, staff would rather have ride-on ones, but the walk-behind one is sufficient for what we need to do and how our building operates.
so now I'm questioning, if I may, the purchase amount of a walk behind at 15,400, when 18,000 you get a ride on one from a different company. And the ride on from Dalco is 25,000. So should we,
Well, remember, the ride-on from this company is also $23,540. They've just given us a really good price for it.
my question is, if this isn't, the walk behind isn't going to get delivered in a while, should we be checking this other company to see if they have the other one in stock and see what kind of a deal they could give us on that one?
We definitely could.
I mean, do you have a delivery date from Delco on the one we approved in May?
They've told us that it may come here in January, but every time we call them, they keep telling us that a few weeks out. So I'm definitely not holding my breath for it
So
to
maybe
show
would it
up.
be worth reaching out to Brenco and saying, hey, here's the model that we wanted, that, we're waiting on, could you shoot us another price on that as well? And maybe we could save a little more on that purchase?
Definitely could.
And maybe it is, if they have it, it'll both be delivered, and you'd have them both at the same time? I don't know if that's an option, but I just feel like if it hasn't been delivered, and I don't know, have we paid for it, Sherry?
No,
or is
we
it-
have not.
So the money's set aside for that.
Well, that's why it would be in the bond, the equipment bond coming up.
Not the
Because we
first one.
zero out.
Not the first one.
Not the first
The
one.
first one?
Yes.
Want to put in the capital equipment bond?
And when it's
Both
sold,
of
because
them?
we are a cash basis, so we don't pay our bills until they arrive.
No.
And so if it arrives in the time that after we do the authorization for the bond, we could put it in the bond. If it arrives before the bond authorization, then it's gotta go, we gotta pay cash for it.
So the question still resides, though. We've set aside
We've already
the
budgeted for that.
15,000 for,
And we will
so,
have to restrict that
okay. And
amount.
Right.
so
So
the
it still
additional
affects
would
cash
be
flow.
this one. But possibly if we reached out to them and they had it in stock, we could save money and just cancel the other order? In theory?
Could look at those options.
I don't want to make you work, but I'm just saying if
I'm
it's not
happy to-
delivered, you
I'd love to get two in-house right away. Would make cleaning go quicker.
And then just the last thing I had a question on is, do we have any available dollars left in our contingency balance of the Iron Trail Motors Event Center contingency fund?
There's about 10,000.
About 10,000?
Yeah, but you realize that's part of the general fund, and it's zeroed out.
So
General
that is
fund
not,
zeroed
those
out.
are not
There's
funds that can be utilized?
Yeah, it'll have to go for expenses of 2022.
Okay, thanks for that, Sherry. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Counselor Paulson. So there are options here to take a look at, and I think we're probably going to make a decision to move it forward to the council meeting for some additional information so we can take a vote on it one way or the other, depending upon the other. And the other option, of course, is to, another consideration, is to, because it's budgeted, the 15,000 is budgeted, cancel the one here if you make contact with Renco, and then see what they'll give you a deal on if we bought two of them. So all those kind of things, the suggestions that we made to try to make the best possible alternate for us to be able to purchase this, to make a decision, a final decision at the council meeting next Tuesday. So we have given you some work to do. And so I want to just move over to our city clerk, Pam. Did you have some more information about the motion that was placed, or did you have something there?
Yes, Mayor, let me pull it up again.
Okay, thank you.
On May 17th, it was approved to purchase the floor scrubber and the IMOP. That was in the amount of $20,549.66 for the two. And it was noted there was a 6-month lead time on the product at that point, and that the finance director noted the funds could be added to the 2023 equipment bond, that it is not in the 2022 budget, and more revenue would be needed to generated to cover the cost of it.
Okay, thank you. Does that also clarify and answer your question, Councilor Beyondich? Okay, Councilor Freelieb.
Sherry, is there a general budgeted number for the capital outlay for the ITMAC for '23?
Yes, I can send you that.
It exceeds $18,000, I'm assuming.
I can't say, I would have to look at what was budgeted.
Not to prolong the conversation, but so the one that's pending and undelivered, is that a circular scrubber or rotational?
Circular scrubber.
So is that something we need for the uncarpeted parts of the arena?
Either scrubber would work
Suffice.
fine.
So if we
Yes.
got two of the others, it would be
Yes.
perfectly fine to do that.
And what I would talk to them about getting is I'd get several quotes. One quote for two of the ride-on, another quote for a ride-on and a walk-behind, just so that we have multiple things to consider, and then make a based off of their quotes, make a recommendation to council.
And what's the alternative plan for when these things aren't delivered and there's cleaning necessary? Do we have ways and means of doing that, or are we just stumbling along?
Right now, we are doing the Karate Kid method of wax on, wax off with a hand mop. Staff is not happy with the end result because the building is not getting as clean as they want it to be. Thankfully, we have not been receiving tons of complaints, but our staff has raised their own expectation of cleanliness of the building, which is a great thing.
And last question, does Belco have local service and maintenance representatives, or will we have to wait for somebody from Fargo?
Somebody from Fargo.
Right, thank you.
Okay, so we're going to look for a motion to move this. You do some more research and move this to the council meetings for additional discussions, potential formal vote. But I have one more question. So you have, we in the police department, others have what they call an equipment replacement schedule, like the fire department, a vehicle replacement schedule, like the police and the fire department. I think the long-term knowledge, we've been working, and we have some equipment that we had to transfer from the Miners Memorial Building to Iron Terre Memorial Event Center. If you don't have it, or if you do have it, I'd like to see a vehicle or an equipment replacement schedule down the pike, a 10-year plan moving forward. And I think we might have that.
I do.
We
Sherry
do.
can send that out again. Yes.
Yeah, would you send that out again for us, Sherry? Thank you very much. Any other questions, comments from the council? I think we'll need a motion to do some additional research and have it available for the next council meeting. I think that's where we're going, Councilor Paulson.
I'll make that motion.
Councilor Paulson moves to direct staff to find additional information regarding alternatives to purchase these scrubbers. Is there support? Support by Councilor Johnson, and we'll be moving that to the next council meeting with the additional information to make a final vote. Thank you, Brian. Moved and supported. Is there any additional discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carries.
Item number 4 is approve the temporary use license agreement with Rockstep Virginia LLC.
And this is related to the Community Resource Officer workspace. Thank you. Councilor Johnson?
Thank you. I had asked that this come back because of the whole number 3 of licensing, there's no fees, no nothing. And I was just wondering, Brian, that you're here, is there any liability that there isn't any licensing and it doesn't say that it's okay, we don't pay anything? Is this acceptable as it's presented?
Mayor, if I may.
Please, Brian.
Thank you. Counselor, I have reviewed the contract and the mechanism that they use. It's they use a standard form lease, I assume, and the strike-through language indicates that all of those provisions are removed. It's just so that all their contracts look the same. So after reviewing the contract, I'm comfortable that there's no opportunity that the city's going to be responsible for licensing fees, rents, or utilities. The only fee that's left in there that there's a potential for is a late fee, but we don't have any obligation to pay, and so that late fee should never come into question. So I'm comfortable that this doesn't expose the city to any unreasonable risk.
Thank you, Brian. I appreciate it. I'll move the license forward.
Councilor Johnson moves to approve the temporary license use agreement with Rockstep LLC. Is there support? Support by Councilor Freelieb. Is there any further discussion? Councilor Johnson.
Can we make sure when we sign this, we send them a thank you note, a legitimate thank you note for their generosity for the community, please?
Thank you. Moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. Item number 5 is review city ordinance, chapter 13, regulating tree shrub planting and maintenance.
Okay, I asked that this be placed on the agenda, and thank you, Brian is here, and I know that we've disseminated this information to the public before, but I don't know if the rest of the council have, but I've got a lot of calls about cutting down the trees on the boulevards all through town. And so there's some concern about what our process is, how do we arrive at what trees are diseased or what trees are planning to come down? Is it based upon what is the criteria used to determine when a tree comes down? So I've asked this to be placed on the agenda for the public's information and those of you who are interested in the trees themselves. And I am a little concerned about of that, so I'd like some clarification about the trees and how they're being removed and what process we use, and are they being inspected, and is there street and alley improvements have to be made? So how do we determine what they come down? And I know these are a lot of questions, and are the people who are affected in the residential areas by these tree cuttings, are they made aware that these trees are coming down? So those are a lot of information that's been asked to me, Brian. I know we've asked you to put this in the agenda so you can prepare a presentation for us today. So thanks once again.
All right. In your packet is a copy of Chapter 13, which pertains to the regulating of tree, shrub planting, and maintenance. This was adopted on February 1st of 1993 by the City Council. It established a city tree board, which just happens to be the Park and Rec Commission. And in all honesty, probably since '93, there has not been a ton done with removal of city-owned trees, the boulevard trees, or anything like that. A lot of our boulevard trees are approaching the end of their lifespan. A lot of our boulevard trees are currently having a negative impact on the curb and gutters and the city infrastructure that is below them. One of the reasons for that is these type of trees that were planted in the boulevards were too large of trees to be planted in the size of those boulevards. We have done pruning of trees since '93. Every year we try and get out there and do pruning. However, you guys know from having been on the council that a lot of our tree maintenance is after storms cleanup with these trees. Jim Rosvit, our Public Works Director, has worked with us and our tree board in starting to mark trees for removal that are having a negative impact on the city infrastructure. That is not something our tree board has really focused on in the past. They've more focused on, it's obvious that this tree is diseased and dying, and that's when the tree has been removed. This past year, starting in October and November, between the Public Works and the Park and Rec Department, we combined forces to remove a bunch of trees that were having negative impacts, and it was quite a chore to remove those trees that we did remove, and in all honesty, the staff did not have the equipment or the time to remove as many trees as we hoped that they would. So there are a lot of trees that are marked with red X's throughout town still for removal. Our process for removing the trees is we paint a red X on the trees that are to be removed, and then as we can get to them, then they are removed. Once a tree is removed, it is now our policy that if the resident wants to have a tree replanted, we will offer them a tree to be replanted on their side of the sidewalk, not within the boulevard. Then that tree will become the personal property of the resident, not to be maintained by the city. Did I answer some, all, most of your questions? Which ones did I skip over?
Well, I know I gave you a lot of information there, but, I think that when we determine, first of all, who determines that the trees are diseased? What kind of inspection is done to determine which trees are selected to come down and which ones stay?
Historically, it has, we've responded to requests of the neighborhood because we don't have a city arborist. We do not have a city forester on staff that is going in and inspecting these trees. So if we're notified that, hey, I believe the tree in front of my house is a problematic tree, then we'll go out and look at it and determine, does it just need to be pruned or does it need to be removed? Here recently, like within the past 6 months, working with Public Works, we have been identifying the trees that are having a negative impact on our curb and gutters and sidewalks, and marking those trees for removal.
As well as infrastructure lines, based on if we're
Yes.
getting calls about sewer lines are being clogged by roots, or,
Thank you.
yep, the water line's being broken because there was a root in there, then we take the tree out of that as well.
Okay, thank you. I would ask that when these trees are determined to be torn down, so we make a subjective analysis of the trees, whether it's by request of a resident or it's by our inspection of what needs to be done in accordance with. So the question I have is, so when these trees are going to come down and they have a negative impact on their infrastructure, both their sewer lines and water lines, is there a scope that goes down? There's a way to determine if that particular tree or that particular group of trees are an adverse impediment to the city services?
That is outside of my realm of knowledge, I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you, Brian. And my second question is, and then we'll go to the rest of the elected body, starting with Councilor Paulson. So I would like to see if the recommendation by the tree group, which includes the Park and Rec Department and the Park and Rec Commission, with you having the responsibility to cut the trees down, that when these red X's are done, I would at the very least like to see that any resident who's going to be affected by the removal of that tree be notified prior to its cutting down, so they have an explanation of how that is going to be fashioned. Because I know that over there in the Williams Addition by the old James Madison School, there were like 8 trees, or I don't know exactly how many, were cut down. And I just received a bunch of calls, and I just didn't have the answer to why they were cut down. And these citizens who are very concerned about the aesthetics and how that goes. So if there's an adverse effect about that tree, I think those who are affected by the removal of that tree in the residential area need to be notified prior to that being cut down. Those are just my opinion, at least right now, my suggestions moving forward. And I would like to hear from the residents too, with respect to that. Councilor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. I do have a couple questions, Brian. Does the Park and Rec Commission work at all with the Street and Alley Committee?
They have not historically, no.
But for this project,
Yes.
Public Works and Park and Rec came together and drove around town looking for trees that they knew were historic problems. Those are the ones they marked with the next. Either we were getting calls of branches falling, or we were getting calls of sewer line backups. So Brian and Jim did drive around town and mark these trees that they know are
So
issues.
kind of where I'm going with this is, I mean, this is a little maybe outside the box, but as we're doing our street plans, and possibly the software that Jim Rosfit wants, you know, for all the mapping and the digitization. My question is, after, especially after you posted how close the cars are and that our emergency vehicles cannot get through, they're having a really hard time getting through when people don't pay attention to calendar parking. My thought process is, as we move forward in planning, when we redo our streets, not specifically the alleys, but the streets, would there be any reason that we couldn't have a conversation about removing partial boulevard trees and expanding the actual roadway itself? So that our emergency vehicles can navigate when those streets are so narrow. And if we're not really going to be replanting on the boulevards, you're going to be suggesting that the resident plant on their own private property. Would that be something that we would want to at least maybe take a look at in our planning process going forward? A lot of these trees are well over 100 years old. I know the trees on 12th Street South where I live, those were removed probably 10 years ago because they were diseased. Not all of them, but quite a few of them. They were dropping very large limbs and hitting cars. So, I'm all for doing what needs to be done, but I'm also kind of looking forward. If we're going to be assessing people on their taxes and redoing our streets, maybe we should assess, should we be widening the streets by changing the way that the boulevard looks? And I don't know if that's one thing that the two departments would want to work together on, or the Street and Alley Committee has even thought about, but that would be something that I think would be for future planning that we could look into.
Every time we do a street project or reconstruction, we are getting rid of the boulevards. We are moving
I've noticed.
widening the streets, getting rid of the boulevards and putting the sidewalk to the curb, just because it's easier to plow and to maintain that as well. And so then that does not allow for trees to be in there anymore. So at the same time, when we're doing these street projects, we do the same thing with the residents, saying, your boulevard tree's coming out, do you want one in your yard? And
So we kind of already have a little process in place that we're
Correct.
doing. Okay,
Correct.
okay.
And like I said, mentioned, the one with the X's is really due to the lack of, we have diseased trees in town, we have dead trees in town that are causing costly insurance claims, because we have to pay for that when a tree limb falls on a car. It's the city's insurance that has to cover that if it was our tree.
So just so there is kind of something ongoing where you guys are assessing at Street and Alley Committee level, as you're doing street projects, what needs to be, come down if we're moving the sidewalk to the street
Correct,
level.
widening the street, putting the curb line to the sidewalk so that there's no.
And is that an overall plan? I don't know, going forward, is that an overall
Yeah, that was back in the
city
90s,
plan?
is where Charlie would have known right off the top of his
I
head the
know,
year we did it.
I know.
Back in the 90s, that was their plan, was that every street, the width will go, we have some streets that are only 25 feet wide. 33 is now the standard. So we're trying to get to at least that in most
Okay.
areas. And then our collector streets, like, or they call them secondary streets, A Street and such, are much wider because that's the way they're designed.
Okay, and
Ninth
I didn't mean to
Avenue.
segue, I just thought if there'd be a way to partner up with, streets that we're going to be working on and looking at dead-end trees, I thought it would be a good,
Now, as
thank you.
a tree enthusiast, one of the problems that I have with this current plan that we have is a lot of times the residents do not want a tree planted in their front yard that they will be responsible for. So we are running the risk of becoming a urban desert with all of the trees that we are removing, which is why several times before I have come before the council saying that where it is appropriate to plant trees, I want us to be putting an emphasis on replanting trees. Currently, I'm having discussions with the Virginia Community Foundation and several other people that are interested in starting a tree planting campaign to add trees where appropriate on our park grounds, golf course areas, so that we have more trees 50 years from now. If we keep cutting down and we're not replanting, eventually we're not going to have trees here, and we don't, or I don't want to see that.
We'll go to Councilor Johnson in a moment. So by replanting a tree on someone's property, and that tree starts to grow and the roots start to develop, if it's on the property where the roots go down and they encumber underneath the sidewalk and they encumber into our infrastructure, then the burden of the responsibility for that falls, goes from the city to the residents. And so, of course,
It would.
Hopefully, and that's so, right?
Because our ordinance states that from the connection to the main to
Right.
your house is your private property.
I-
So that
yeah.
all becomes your,
Yep, and I understand that part, and I understand that, over time, a long period of time, that grows. Those people are residents have been adversely affected or could be adversely affected by the tree removal. They're not going to be around 75 years from now or whatever, so they're going to not be able to enjoy the maturity of a tree in their yard once again. Councilor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. I do want to give a shout out to Jim Rosfett. When they did the 12th Street removal in the James Madison area, the homeowners were contacted. I know one very specifically last summer that a random tree branch fell randomly and just missed a car. It wasn't a storm, it was just an old tree. And she was very happy with that she had been contacted about those trees coming down and that they got taken down. I like that. And you kind of alluded to this a little bit, but part of the challenge with plowing is the streets are the trees are so close to the street that they have to be 2 or 3 feet out from the curb to be able to put the snow somewhere without hitting the tree. So I think that, we're trying to do what we can. And the other thing that I think that's key of what we are doing, Brian, is making sure it's the appropriate kind of trees to be planted. You hinted at that at the very beginning, but just planting any old tree is not helpful. Whatever you see up above the ground, there's at least that much below the ground. And so if you've got a big, beautiful tree in front of your house, underneath the root system is probably under your basement if you have one, because they're so large. So I appreciate that you've also said to us in previous meetings many times that for every one tree we're taking down, we're trying to plant at least 2 other ones somewhere within the city to maintain that balance. So I appreciate the work you're doing on this, and I think that it's just hard. Trees only live so long before they fall down, and we're trying to get ahead of that so they're not falling on people or property. I appreciate your time, Brian. Thank you.
And just to clarify, that is a goal to plant 2 trees for every one that we take down. We are not there.
Well, I get the fact that you got to take down diseased trees. I get the fact that when we're doing new construction projects and widening the streets, that those trees have to be removed. I think the citizen tree understands that. But when there's an X on a tree, you know, maybe Jim Rosbett has been contacting the people, but once the X is on the tree, there are people who have called me, a lot of people. And they're, what's that red X, or when are they going to cut that tree down? So it's nice for them to, if they're planning in place, to ensure that these residents are notified and have the opportunity to get an explanation as to why that's going on. If those other 2 items aren't being addressed, there was no new tree stuff going on, no construction going on, and those kind of things. So, so I just go back to taking down the diseased trees and how we determine that. But Councilor Beyondich.
Thank you. And I know this conversation, we're veering kind of all over the place. But as I'm reading in our packet, which this is public information, the 13.05 public tree care of street trees. The city shall have the right to plant, prune, maintain, and remove trees, plants, and shrubs within the lines of all streets, alleys, lanes, squares, and public grounds as may be necessary to ensure the public safety or to preserve or enhance the symmetry and beauty of public grounds. The few people that have contacted me about trees, they were very concerned about the tree falling on their house. And this particular woman was an elderly woman, and she watched that tree through the storms. That tree was removed. She was very happy with that. And thank you for bringing up the future of our streets. As in the last 2 weeks, our street is impassable. Our parking, because of the narrow streets, emergency vehicles have not been able to get down our street. They've had to back up. I myself, on Friday night, had to back onto 9th Avenue, where I couldn't see if traffic was coming. So we have a lot of issues in town, but the trees, the only feedback that I have had on the trees is the safety of the resident, and the city has to pay if that tree falls and damages a home, a car, and heaven forbid anybody gets hurt. But some of the trees, and I think it's just more of an open line of communication. If the public, if it could be communicated with the public as to why and how that determination came, it's a little bit more understandable. So, thank you.
Yeah, I agree. The residents have to be notified, should be notified when the plan is to take the tree down. And I've read through the ordinance before, before I came to the community hall today. Yeah, we have the right to do it. It's how we do it. What determination do we make when we do it? Under what circumstances do we do it, and how do we notify the residents that's being done? So I think that's all part of the communication process. It's a big job, and so when a tree comes down, like the example that you gave, Councilor Beyondich, and I've got calls about that too, up on 8th Avenue, up on North Side, where you went up there, the tree was, you could see it was rotting on the bottom, the roots were hanging up, the tree was bending. that was an emergency. It was cut down, and the residents understood that. They were well aware of it. They made the concern about that, and we addressed the issue, and we addressed the safety part of that. But it's just the regularly scheduled tree cutting over a period of time, aside from the new construction that needs to be done in order to work that over. So if an infrastructure is being impeded, then those trees likely will have to come down, and we have a plan in place in which to do that. But I think the residents need to be more aware, I think, and you alluded to the communication piece. I think that's important. So is anybody here in the audience that have some concerns? You're welcome to come forward and speak if you like. Thank you. And if you wouldn't mind, please state your name for the record, and welcome to the committee of the whole meeting.
All right, thanks for having me and letting me speak at this time, because I hear what you guys are saying, and I kind of want to bring a different of what my feeling and what the shared vision is. I'm Christy Hill, and I'm a Virginia resident, Lencey Addition. I guess I want to start with a little background of why I want to speak to you today, of how pertinent, how I feel residents are receiving their information. 5 years ago, the city took down a tree across the street from my house. The felled tree accidentally took out a boulevard tree in my yard. I was told at that time they would replace my tree. The next year, they ground the stump, and I spoke to Brian Silber, and Brian mentioned he was applying for a 2-year grant. The first year, the grant was to assess the trees in the city, and the second year was to implement the results of this assessment. Brian spoke of how the city needed new trees due to the lack of trees planted in previous years. Years passed, and I started to notice that many trees were disappearing from our community, especially around Bailey's Lake and in areas where roads were being widened. I would call Brian occasionally, meaning every 6 months or so, to inquire about the grant and what the plan was for the community. Unfortunately, I would never receive a call back. Then this fall, I saw nearly all the trees on the James Madison block was taken down, and within the last couple of weeks, many of the trees in Lencey Addition were being marked for removal. This was extremely, I was looking for information from Parks and Rec again, but I did not receive a call back. This was extremely frustrating to me, and it was motivating me to further talk to Larry Cuffey. I talked to Gary here and Jim Rosfit over the last couple of weeks. Each person that I talked to was helpful, but it was clear to me that there wasn't a unified understanding of the immediate or long-term plan regarding trees. When I finally did get a hold of Brian, I was very frustrated because I didn't know when the trees were coming down, what the pink X's meant, and now I see that there's white X's on some of the trees, and I was able to give any input on my block. By the way, I'd like to apologize to Brian because my tone was out of frustration when I spoke to him, and I want to apologize for that. I did ask Brian for the copy of the grant so I could see the plan, and I was then informed that there was no grant in place, which I was taken aback by. So then my question is, what plan are we working under and who's making these decisions? When I talked to Mayor Cuffey, I was told the tree would be replanted, and he was under the impression initially that there was kind of this grant in place. When I talked to Gary, he was kind of unsure of the plan, besides it was an infrastructure issue. And Jim Rosfit said it was an infrastructure issue and that people with marked with trees in their yard would be contacted. I know that this has not happened in our area for several people. During my phone call with Brian, he told me the plan was not to replant trees in boulevard trees or boulevard areas, but that the city would give a tree if it was planted 6 feet back from the curb at the homeowner's expense. So I asked Brian for the tree that, since I got a tree cut down, can I have the one that was to be replanted? He said he'd get back to me in an email. He emailed me the next day and he said that I could not have a tree, that I have 2 trees already in my yard. Those trees are apple trees and they're close to my house. I have plenty of room for a shade tree. So again, I want to refer back to where is this stated in the plan of Virginia? Who's making these decisions, or is it being decided by one person's philosophy? Councilman Steve Johnson stated online that 2 trees will be planted for every tree taken down. I've been waiting for a tree to be planted for 5 years, so I failed to see how that's happening. When I look around Virginia, once boulevard trees are cut down, the majority of citizens will not be able to replant. Most of the Northsiders either on a hill or do not have a front yard to plant a tree without impacting their structure. Where would these replacement trees be planted? Obviously, planting trees in the park does not help to cool down my block or provide an aesthetically pleasing place to live when a tree is planted elsewhere. Councilman Johnson stated that the boulevard trees have been neglected for years. However, the city has invested in a tree maintenance project 2 years ago, which included trimming trees. So why was the money spent on this project if trees are being cut down today? I also question the comment that trees make it difficult for the streets to be plowed, as that does not appear to be the case on my block, but not saying that's not elsewhere. Speaking to the issue of sidewalks, when John Bachman was Director of Parks and Rec, he polled our block on the issue of sidewalks. The residents of 10th Street voted by an 80% margin to get rid of them and keep trees. Do we need sidewalks on all side streets? Yes, they are important for travel on avenues, but many neighborhoods don't even utilize sidewalks to this day. And as a dog walker in the city, many streets aren't even passable during the winter as I'm walking, so we're not using those sidewalks for part of that time. As for other infrastructures, our storm sewers are below the frost line. If the boulevard trees have coexisted with drain storm infrastructures for 50 to 70 years, what evidence tells us this relationship is still unable to exist? Also with the concern of infrastructure interference, why are the ITMEC trees planted so near the curbs and sidewalks? So my question goes back to, what is Virginia's philosophy and vision for city's trees? Do we want to be proactive or reactive? It appears the city is trying to save money on tree maintenance and shift tree ownership and liability to residents. This seems very short-sighted for a viable tree plan for our town, as residents will not want the liability or financial responsibility. And as I've said, unfortunately, most homeowners do not even have a place to put a tree on the sidewalk to their house. Some facts about trees that put value to our community: as our summers are getting warmer, one tree is equivalent to a 10-room size air conditioners operating 20 hours a day. Shaded surfaces are 20 to 45 degrees cooler than unshaded surfaces. A tree increases a homeowner's value of their house. Hotspots are generally in poorer areas where they cannot afford trees, and we see that around the 2nd Avenue area. Trees improve water quality, resulting in less runoff and erosion. One tree can reduce thousands of gallons in stormwater each year through runoff interception and uptake. Trees improve people's mental health and blood pressure. Cities across Minnesota nationwide are able to find the balance between infrastructure and trees, so why can't we? I understand that trees need to be removed because of age. Why can't some be cut down, then replanted, and 5 to 10 years later, another few cut down and replaced? This would create a cycle where all trees don't age at once and can be replaced efficiently. I would like to move to a moratorium on further removal of non-diseased trees until the city acquires professional input from, such as an architectural horticulturist. The city previously utilized Jim Schoberg, who had the knowledge to make informed decisions regarding our trees. Also, we have to have a plan in writing to what Virginia's vision is in the future that will benefit generations to come. We used to take pride in how Virginia looked with our parks and trees. In order to keep our tax base in place, we need to defer back to what has worked for our town in the past. I also don't think the citizens are involved in this process as they should be, nor is this process disseminated to the public as it should be required. I appreciate you letting me speak at this time, and thank you.
Thank you very much for coming. I just want to say that Brian is our conduit to this, and we have authorized him for the responsibility of removing these trees. And it's our phosphorus elected by the Weathers back in 1993 or 2023 that this program is moving forward. And for me personally, and I'm not speaking for the rest of the council, I'm speaking for myself, that, we've made decisions about certain things. And I think we all agree that if we're doing a new road and street project and we need to widen the streets, those trees have to come down. I think most citizens understand that. If they're diseased, I think the process is how are they determined to be diseased and to cut them down. And so I think for me, this is a significant issue, maybe not in the scheme of city government and all the other things that we do for the city, but it does have the aesthetic compromise of the way our city looks with our city streets. And the photograph that was sent to us in a package shows how beautiful our trees are. So we have to find that balance. And I think Brian has done his due diligence. We're trying to find that balance. And so I really believe that we should have some kind of a little information session one time at the Iron Tower Memorial Event Center and explain all this and come up with a plan on how we're going to move forward and lay it all out as you asked, but Ryan has also indicated, and we have, saying that if we need to do an infrastructure program with our streets, then we have to widen the streets, so those things have to come down. And so I think it bears a larger conversation, and I put this on the agenda for that purpose, to try to get some more public knowledge about how that works. And I apologize to you because I thought that there was a grant in place. So that was I apologize for that. I know that I thought we had applied for a grant, and I made an assumption without double checking before I talked to you that there was a grant in place, and I apologize that we don't have one in place, but we have that tree replacement schedule. So I think we should have some kind of a public meeting and talk about this at one time, sometime in the very near future, before we start cutting down more trees and get an engagement of the rest of the public and improve the communication that we have with those trees that are designated to be removed. So that being said, Councilor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. I would agree with you. I think it would be a prudent thing to have a larger discussion on this issue for sure. But I'm just reading in the ordinance, there's several sections in the ordinance under 13.05, public tree care. And it does state no other planting may be done without the consent of the city forester or engineer. So at some point when that ordinance was written in 93, did the city of Virginia have an engineer that looked at it, or was it a city forester that we actually had under employment?
Britt, could you answer that, because I can't?
Yeah, we would have had an engineer here at the time.
It would have been our engineer who was versed in,
At the time, in 93, it probably would have been Benchmark.
so it would have been under an actual firm. And so it states that in the ordinance. So is that something that anybody that we currently professionally work with can help us with an assessment as we go forward with this discussion? So I would recommend bringing professional people into that discussion. I don't want to go open another can of worms with employment, but I know we had talked a lot extensively about the greenhouse, and I don't know. I think we should have a larger conversation about, the trees and they're very important, obviously, to our community. But I think having a plan in place is paramount. So I would absolutely appreciate having that larger discussion. Thank you.
And the largest discussion was include maybe bringing a professional in to help us determine, the value of those trees and the lifespan of them as well.
I guarantee you the lifespan's way past, we are way past what they're supposed to be.
And
We should have replanted them years ago, and we all know that, but.
Sure, I think that is correct. It is correct. But I still think we need to have that meeting because it does have an adverse effect on the community as well. We have a plan in place, but I think the community needs to know, I think it would be in the best interest of the community and us to at least have that conversation and how we determine what's moving forward, and help Brian and his staff take care of that process, because the ordinance says one thing, we don't have a forester, we have an engineer who makes that decision. We try to do that based upon the engineering piece comes when we do street infrastructure. Then the trees are removed because the engineers say, we can't, we got to cut them down because we have to replace the water and sewer mains. We all get that. But it's the other portions of the other trees that are within the city, and by planting another tree in a park or planting another tree someplace else in its place, doesn't really have a pronounced positive impact on those trees that are cut down in front of somebody's residence. And I get that. It's a difficult decision to make. It's a difficult process moving forward. But I think we need to have that discussion from my perspective. So any other comments? Councilor Beyondich?
Thank you, and thank you for speaking. But when we have this meeting, would we be able to include Public Works and Public Utilities? I know, and I'll just use my place as an example. We have some large trees. Our sidewalks are popped up. The sidewalk plow can't go down our sidewalk, or they're gonna fly. So I would like to include all entities to come together so we can all discuss it and have an open discussion on it, if that works.
Yeah,
Okay,
thank you. I would like to have motion or to direct staff in which to set up a meeting at a time that we can do that at the Iron Tremores Event Center and bring all the parties to bear and discuss and talk about the process at home, so everybody's on the same page of what the plan is, and everybody has the same information moving forward. So Councilor Beyondich.
Thank you. I will make that motion. I will also recommend that it be in the evening so homeowners are able to attend. Thank you.
Sure, thank you. Is there support for that motion? Support by Councilor Freely. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carries. Thank you, councilors, for your patience here. Thank you for coming to the meeting, and so we'll set something else up and have this discussion moving forward and put that plan in place. So we place the burden on our Park and Rec director, and it's our issue to make sure that we address it, so thank you. Rick?
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is review the proposed rental code and fee schedule.
Okay, we have a request for a break. Can we take 5 minutes? Is that okay? Let's take a few minutes. Thank you. All right. Yeah, okay. Okay. Everybody ready to get back to business? Just took a quick break, those of you listening at home. Well, a few more items on the agenda today, so Britt?
We're back on item number 6, review the proposed rental code and fee schedule, and this is just coming to you for review after the last planning and zoning review.
Okay, I read through this. I looked at the fee schedule. The only question I have is that when you apply for a permit, those permit fees, did they increase? Yes. Okay, thank you. That's all I need to know. Counselor Beyondich.
Thank you. And I did read through this, and what I really liked is the expected outcomes. I've attended some of the meetings and the public where the public could come and speak. And I just want to assure people that the rental code ordinance is to make sure that we are providing safe housing for residents. So I think they have done a really good job with this. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Beyondich. As we look through this, so those who haven't had the opportunity to review it, it's been a long, arduous process with planning and zoning, putting this together. Ran it through staff, our engineering department, or our code enforcement, planning and permitting department has also vetted this out and took a look, and they collaborated on this ordinance. It's been a long process moving forward, over a year or more. And looking at other ordinances and how they work, doing the due diligence and discussing and coordinating and planning and putting together this ordinance, I think it's a workable ordinance. When it's time to implement this, we may have to make adjustments along the way, but I think right now we have a very strong, solid framework moving forward. So, Councilor Paulson.
Mayor, I just have 2 questions on the, on that crime-free housing, Brian, where it's all struck out, to be future, something added in the future. Is that because we are not, the city of Virginia is not part of crime-free housing? Is that why?
Well, the city of Duluth had a crime-free housing program. They don't utilize it anymore.
So we will eventually be adding language to that section for crime-free housing, or will we sunset or not even include it like Duluth?
The Planning and Zoning Commission also looked at Grand Rapids too, that did not implement it either. They held it in the reserves, just like they were suggesting here. They are really, while we started with the Duluth model, they really jumped on the Grand Rapids model, and they said Grand Rapids took out the crime-free, decided they didn't need it at this moment, and been going for 2 years, I believe, and it's not been a problem yet.
Okay.
But they may in the future.
So we just
similar
leave
thing.
that open to reserve the spot to add language in the future, and the strike-through is the language from
Zoning's-
Duluth
Yeah,
that
exactly.
could be used as a template.
Correct.
Okay. And then I just have, the other question that I have is, which department will be the department that will actually be maintaining, I'm trying to find that grid there, hold on. So there's the proposed rental code fees, total number of units, is that an assessment that was done by planning and zoning as possibly like how many rentals there are here?
This was information, and this might be a little outdated, it might have changed just a little bit, that we received in 2018 from the assessors, what they knew
Okay.
were rentals at that moment. It might be changed, I can't imagine it's
Sure.
changed a lot, but
Okay.
there might be a few changes there.
So then, I guess my question is, which department will be maintaining and managing this? Will this fall under community development and planning?
Yes, and that's the $1 million discussion we need to have with the councils. If we agree, we want to come to you with a plan that we need to hire more staff. And as you see, theoretically, this would raise some funds that would
That's
assist
what I was
in getting some staff in.
Looking at.
Yeah, assist in getting some staff. The system that we put in place for the new permitting software we bought about 2 years ago for the planning and zoning, or for community development, has the ability to help track us this, where the fire department can see it, police can see it.
So it
They
is
can
within
see it.
that software that they got to.
That's why we got that software, is we intended to
Okay.
use it for this purpose. It's the staff time. This is a lot of people to input and a lot of
That's
things
what I
to
was
track.
looking at, yeah, so,
Yeah.
So we'll have to have another overall conversation once this is implemented as to which department and how
How we're staffing it.
how we're staffing it going forward. And then the other portion that I have a question on, again, it's more staffing, but enforcement. Who will be the enforcement mechanism? Will it still be the community development and planning, or will it be fire? Will it be police? Who will be the actual enforcement?
The designated building official will be the actual overseer, but they could designate an inspector to be the one that does the inspections. And then fire also has its own separate fire code that it overrides everything else, the building code.
So it would be the building code official would
With
kind
the
of,
fire department.
okay.
And then if needed, there are some places that they know that they're going to want the police with them. They'll bring the police in as well as part of the
And
inspection.
then, is that with, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to go on and on, but
Oh,
I
this
just
is
am
good
trying to
questions.
understand the logistics a little bit. Would that be under the new fire marshal's purview then?
That was what it was intended originally, was that the fire marshal, and they, because of this added, they probably will have to add on an inspector also over there. So there's going to be a large discussion about how are we doing this? What are we doing?
And that is the estimated revenue generation at the bottom
Correct, the bottom right-hand side is
bottom
the,
right-hand side. Okay. Okay, I think that's it for now. Thank you so much.
So as our building official and code official determines the viability or the habitability of rental properties in the city of Virginia, they'll determine whether or not, if it's a fire code violation or something, they'll do the inspection. The fire marshal will go there. The police will play actually two roles based upon my perspective on there, the two roles. The first role is to go into those designated properties where there might be hostile. They'll do it for protection of the code official and the building official moving forward or whatever. And then the second is that if there's a crime that was committed in that building, the police take over the crime scene or take over the jurisdiction of that. And if that police officer determines during the course of that inspection, whether it's domestic assault or child neglect or whatever the case may be, and finds and sees in the purview of, in the open, not searching somebody's house, but they see it out and open, there's a wire loose or whatever, that police officer would notify the code official, give the opportunity for them to come in and inspect it. So it's kind of a multi-role purpose, depending upon what the issue is within the rental property. One, two, or all three could actually be part of that process. Councilor Freely.
There's an accountability factor, obviously, that needs to be intended on behalf of the landlords, and that's what we're trying to do. I really don't have a handle on what relationships there are between landlords and residents or renters in this community, but is there, and maybe I missed it, is there something in this that's going to provide some accountability on the part of the people that are actually renting these properties that provide some safeguard for the landlord themselves? Because we're creating these safe spaces and livable, affordable, livable areas, but what accountability will there be on behalf of this ordinance that's going to put some burden on the people that are actually renting these to maintain that building in an effort to not be, financially burdensome repeatedly on the landlord who's having damages occurring regularly? Is that reasonable to consider something that, like, for example, just somebody called the other day about somebody utilizing a rental space in a residential area as kind of a bed and breakfast. And when it's being used as that, there's a gathering of people that are there to party on that evening or whatever, and a multitude of vehicles now are in front of people's residences, and they can't get from their home to their car without stomping through the snowbank and so on. So they called and asked, like, what rules are there with regard to people renting out their homes for these types of events or occurrences? So those are the kinds of things that I think need to be considered in this as well. Some safeguards on behalf of the landlords, because we are increasing their accountability factor, but we also need to increase the accountability factor on the people that are actually renting those properties, if that's reasonable.
And I think part of that process is being involved in a rental code ordinance in the past. part of that question was answered in the public forum and how they move forward with that. And the landlord has a significant amount of responsibility. They rent the property to a specific person. If that specific person is using it for a bed and breakfast, which is illegal under our code, then we can take enforcement action, or the landlord can take enforcement action by sanctioning or advising or removing that renter. And it has a lot to do with the lease. If there's a lease and there's certain criteria established in that lease, and the renter is not complying with the conditions of the lease, then the landlord has the responsibility to take action to prohibit or to inhibit or to prevent those kind of things from happening. Is that correct, Brian? Brian?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, that's correct. And if I may expound just a little bit more, there is, for landlords, there is another benefit to this type of a provision, because with the involvement and kind of that higher expectation that the city would have through the rental code, the rental ordinance on landlords, it's easier for a landlord to establish that the condition of a unit was good before someone moved in, and it's easier because there's more documentation, there's more inspections to show where those damages occur, which a lot of times is a difficult thing for landlords to do. Yeah, there's no real direct responsibility. As the mayor had indicated, a lot of times it's just through lease enforcement.
Thank you, Councilor Freely. Brian, thank you. Councilor Johnson?
And the fee schedule at the end, that'll be set by resolution, correct? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Johnson. Okay, we're just in the review process right now, so, take your time to read it over the time, and at the appropriate time, we'll be asked to approve it.
Does the council want to do another public input session? Not necessarily a meeting, but we certainly can put it on our website and on Facebook and let everybody know this draft is on the website. If you'd like to put in a comment in writing, you have 30 days to submit it to the city clerk, or.
I think that's wise. My perspective is, and I'll move to the rest of the council too, that maybe we have one more informational session. Landlords want to come, renters want to come, citizens want to come and listen to what the ordinance is, and they can ask some questions. Moving forward, I think it would be prudent for us to have that last one meeting and conversation of information about what the final draft is of this ordinance. Councilor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. I will move to direct staff to set a meeting in a 30-day period at which for additional public input before we move it for the readings.
Okay, moved by Councilor Johnson. Is there support?
Support for discussion.
Support by Councilor Freely for discussion. Further discussion, Councilor Freely.
You know, at the advent or the beginning of this, Mr. Sullivan was intimately involved in the whole creation of this. And so I would suggest that when we get the new person on board, get them up to speed, and then we'd have that person as our point person in regard to that public hearing, which would be the fourth one, by the way, that we've had, so.
Sure. So the motion was to set it within 30 days, right?
With the 30-day, so it'd be the start of the 30-day period. When it's set is up to the staff.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Thank you for that clarification. So it has been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carries, and I'm assuming this meeting will be set sometime in the evening hours.
Correct.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is review the Iron Trail Motors Event Center naming rights agreement.
Well, I looked through it, and I have the same issues, concerns, angst, all those things involved in that. So I'm going to defer to the body first before I make any further comments. First, we'll go to Councilor Motley, and then over to Councilor Johnson, and then Councilor Paulson. Councilor Motley.
So I believe the city reached the contract in October of this year, or 2022, when the girls' varsity hockey team played their first game at the Hippodrome. Has Iron Trail called us out on the breach of contract?
They have not. Councilor Paulson, and then to Councilor Johnson.
Okay, so in addressing, there's pretty much two kind of critical points from where I guess I sit in my understanding, and one of them is the high school hockey. It's required that they play all home games. We are obviously in breach of that. And number two, the second one for me is the very restrictive ads or advertisements from any competing entities. So I'd like to know if this contract can be renegotiated or opened back up, or if it's an addendum to a contract. I think we had talked, the addendum way was the better way. But I think, to me, those are the two, I mean, to all of us, those are the two most glaring issues. And I think, to be honest with you, it is a community center. It's owned and paid for by the taxpayers. I truly believe that there shouldn't be a non-compete for advertising clause. I had a really hard time with that one, and I know that it's written, they can go and get written permission. But and Brian's here, those spaces on the rocker boards, they're only like half filled. Is that correct? Yeah.
Would you please come forward, Jim?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean
And,
to.
and turn the light on, and then we'll have to have this conversation. Once again, Jim, what was the answer?
Good morning. Yes, only half of them have been sold, or a few less than half.
And I'm just wondering if we cut our nose off to spite our face. So, the new sign looks beautiful. It's all lit up. I think Masaba Sign did a gorgeous job. They're paying for the naming rights, so their name is now on the building. But if we can make some adjustments, that's where I would like to go. And I don't know how open Iron Trail would be to having that discussion. But I think in all reality, the contract is not working for the city of Virginia. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. I agree. I do believe we should have a meeting and discuss it with Iron Trail Board's representatives, see what can be done. I have some more comments to make, but I'll move over to Councilor Johnson. Councilor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. I thought
Thank you,
when I made the motion, it was for the council to have a closed negotiation so we could discuss how we wanted to move forward, not to be put on another agenda, a council committee of the whole agenda. That's my recollection of what was supposed to have happened. And I would still stand by that. I think this council needs to have a closed negotiation for how we're going to move forward with this, if that's allowable under law, because why would we discuss something in public? We all have concerns, but we've all had these concerns for 4 months and nothing keeps happening. So that's where I'm sitting right now. How do we move forward as a council before? And I know I was very specific about before having a meeting with Iron Trail Motors and their representatives. I was very specific about that, I'm sure of.
Yeah, I think I recall that as well, Councilor Johnson. And I think that whenever we have a contract and we're trying to renegotiate, usually we do that in a closed environment. Is that correct, Brian?
For labor negotiations, that is correct. For this particular issue, I can look into a little bit more, but really the mechanism or the tool that we would have to close a meeting would be to receive attorney-client privileged information. Typically, that's restricted for something that's in imminent or pending litigation.
So and I recall the request by Councilor Johnson about having that meeting in closed format. Is that something that we can do, or would you need to do some additional research to determine if that we can do that legally?
I would probably want to take just a quick look at it a little bit more. The other option would be to, basically form a committee or assign a couple of folks that would act as essentially a negotiating committee.
Okay, thank you. Any comments, questions, Britt, that you might have? Any input that you'd like to make? Okay, so
I would move to direct Brian to figure out what our next step is and bring it back to next Tuesday's meeting so we can take action.
okay, is that clear enough? Okay, thank you. Would you please read back the motion that's made by Counselor Johnson, and then we'll look for support.
Direct the city attorney to determine the next step in the process for discussion on the Iron Trail Motors Event Center naming right agreement.
Okay, thank you. Support?
I'll support for discussion, so
Okay, support for further discussion. Further discussion, Counselor Freely.
can we streamline it to specific portions of the contract that we are in concern with rather than the overall contract, or do we need to start from the beginning to the end? Case in point, for example, just what we heard right now, I don't think it was Iron Trail's intention in getting into this contract with us to deter us from having revenue in our own building on the boards for advertising. And that's what's happening right now, is that we're not getting people able to advertise because of the stipulations in that contract, which in my opinion are not really stepping on the toes of Iron Trail in a fashion in which they may be anticipated and maybe are open to further discussion in regard to that. Truth is, those boards have previously provided revenue for the youth hockey program, I believe, in the past. So even if that was the case, they'd still be imposing on the revenue that youth hockey would be. So I don't think they intended in any way to keep us from having revenue provided in our building, but they are. And so that's at least one piece of that contract that I think needs to be rediscussed with them in terms of like how it's impacting our revenue in that building and how I think minimally it would be impacting on their business. So I'm just trying to think in terms of how we streamline what we need to discuss to approach them with what aspect of the contract we're wanting to rediscuss, so to speak, or rewrite. And then the other aspect, like Councilor Motley mentioned, is that there was an anticipation by October for the full schedule to be put in place, but we really have no authority in that decision-making process, how things are scheduled. And I don't think that Iron Trail had that knowledge as well. Neither did we at that point. We just assumed that having a brand-new facility, that's where it would be scheduled if we were fiercely united in what we were trying to attempt for the youth in this community. But that didn't happen. And so that's another thing that's kind of taken us back and needs to be rediscussed in terms of like how we respond to that. So in any event, I just want to streamline that discussion to those aspects of the contract that need to be rediscussed rather than rewrite the whole thing. Because I am appreciative of the fact that a business in this community is providing us that kind of revenue for our building by the advertising money that they're paying for us each month over the course of the next 20 years. So I'm appreciative. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Freely. I think part of Councilor Johnson's motion is to have our city attorney take a look at, what can be done legally, what our next steps moving forward is, and then, of course, negotiations come as far as discussions go. We can bring up, we don't have to redo the whole contract. We can pick up certain issues that we might have that we'd like to make adjustments within that structure. So that's all part of this moving forward and getting some more input on the process moving forward. What are our next steps as the motion says. Councilor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. So just to clarify the motion, Councilor Johnson, is that you're wanting our city attorney to go back and see what portions of the meeting could be closed before we have another conversation? Or, because what I'd like to do is kind of direct, more like Councilor Freely was saying, streamline it, what we want Brian to work on. And then, like, how is your motion crafted, like, to go into, are you asking Brian to direct us to go into closed session and look into that? Or look into what needs to be changed in the contract?
So, if I may, Mayor.
Please, Councilor Johnson.
I'm just frustrated that we keep talking about doing something. And if we want to have an open discussion right now, I'm fine with that. But then everybody needs to be open and honest about what our frustrations are and what our asks are. If it's not liable to do it in closed, I don't have anything to hide. I never have sitting here. I just want to make sure that what's being said is what's meant by the people here. I think that for me, we need to get in writing from them, absolutely no extra sponsors, or yes, this is allowable. My biggest challenge is when we had held Festival of Trees there last year, and all the complaining and all the confusion, and there can't be signs up, that needs to go away. Anybody who uses that building needs to know before they sign a contract what they can put up as a private entity, and we need that clarified extremely well in moving forward. That we got an email about practice jerseys not being able to have washkis on them, and who said that and who didn't say that. We need to be able to say that. That's the only thing this connects to is if it's attached to the building versus under the ice, or, those kind of, if it's the dasher boards, which are affixed to the building, but they aren't because we can move the dasher boards, like, that's the kind of stuff I want clarified, so that over the next 10 years or however long this is, this can go away and our community can utilize that building and sponsor it appropriately. And it doesn't have so much to do with revenue for the building, it's about it being a community building and being able to utilize it. So if Boschke's wants to put up a dasher board because they're sponsoring hockey, I think they should be allowed to do that. I don't think it detracts from anything. If anything, for me, it says a lot about Iron Trail Motors that we have to have this conversation about other community members putting something in our building. And that's where my frustration lies. So if we can have that discussion and everybody's comfortable with doing it, let's do it and get it done with, and give them our asks. If we don't need to go into closed session, I'm fine with that. I would honestly prefer not to be in closed session, but I would want to make sure everybody's can say what they need to say as we move forward. So I don't think that answers the question, but that's my intent, is to figure out how to solve this and solve it quickly. Because we've already directed the staff to start negotiating with Rockridge about what next year looks like. And we need to have answers going into that negotiation, that if it doesn't matter, that we're in breach of something that we should have never put in a contract, to be quite honest. And I think Councilor Beyondich just says that several times, and I agree with that. We were under the impression, and we were given verbal yeses, that it would be the exclusive home of all Rockridge hockey. And that didn't happen, and that's nothing to do with us. We can't control that. We are the landlords, and we can only rent out. We can't make, agreements for other people. So that's where I'm at with that. And I would drop my motion if we can have that conversation and get it figured out today.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Johnson. So here, the motion was, if I may, was to just have Brian take a look at, can we go into closed session, can we not? What are our next steps, one way or the other? Then we can have this conversation openly or in closed session, depending upon the opinion by our attorney, and get this resolved. Pick the issues that we have an issue with, the concerns that we have with certain codicils in that contract, and address those, not the entire contract, and try to get some clarification, resolution, or amendment to that. And I think that's where we want to get to eventually. But we're looking for an opinion, whether that we do this openly or closed, because there's going to be some significant discussion, probably some emotional discussion about that. So we do that privately if it's legal. If not, then we have a meeting to air it out based upon what we need. Okay, well then we can have that conversation.
But at this moment, we don't have a reason to have a litigation reason to go to attorney-client
So
privilege.
that's what I'm asking. So do we need to bump it ahead, or can we just discuss?
Well, I think, well, I don't care. I mean, if you want to discuss it now, we could certainly do that. It's gonna be a significant discussion here, but that's fine, whatever needs to be done. But I don't know if we're prepared to do that. I think we should take a look at the contract itself, pick out some of the things that we think are we want to negotiate, run that through our city attorney, and then have an open discussion about those particular things. If we go to each one of us is going to have a part of that. Well, I want to discuss this part. I want to discuss that part, which is good, but it's going to be a significant discussion. So we can do that now, or we can. So we don't need an opinion then. It's from you, Brian.
No, thank you, Mayor. We can have a discussion in open session about what the issues are. Where we may want to be careful is having any discussion about what strategies the city may use to address those
Right.
issues. And I think that's the difference.
And so when you discuss the issues at the lane, that kind of sets where our strategy is going to be too, right? I mean, we're an open book then. Okay, so what's the council want to do? The motion, there's a motion on the floor in support, correct? Or is there no support?
Got my light on.
There's motion in support.
Still
Further
my light.
discussion? Yep. I just want to make sure that this motion stands and under the area of discussion. Councilor Paulson.
Mayor, so going back, I think this is why I was trying to clarify what Brian's role was going to be. So if we can't go into closed session, I certainly do want to address the points, the highlights even that I began talking about, and it's basically page 45, or in our packet, but it's page 3 of the 6 pages of the contract. Item C, which is signage and sponsorship exclusivity. And that's why I was asking, I'd rather streamline it like Councilor Friedlieb wants to do, but do we need to open up the whole contract to do that, or can we add an addendum with struck language? I mean, that kind of sounds counterintuitive. And then the other one would be the hockey. So I think that's what we all agree on, that those are the two main issues. Would you not say that those are the two issues within the contract that are not working for the city of Virginia?
Well, there are more than two,
There are, okay.
but those are the two that we're discussing now. Brian? The question is, do we need to open up the entire contract for discussion, or is this something we can discuss certain parts of that contract?
Thank you, Mayor. We can always address certain portions of the contract, and we can bring those issues to Iron Trail's attention. And I mean, looking at the contract, there was some conversation about, well, aren't we in breach of the contract for the hockey games not all being played at the Iron Trail? The answer to that is yes, but their only remedy is to reopen the contract and renegotiate a price. And so that's essentially what we could do as a city, is we could pick out those areas of the contract that really cause issue with the city, and we can make a proposal for amendment to those items. Just indicate that we are good with the rest of the contract and we wish it to stay in place. That being said, we can't force our amendments on Iron Trail. They would have to agree to them voluntarily. But in that event, the amendments could certainly be made to specific portions without reopening the entire agreement.
Thank you, Brian. Does that answer your question, Councilor Paulson?
Yes, it does, and I'd be very curious to know the other issues you were referring to.
Well, the issues I have is with respect to not just the advertising and not just the hockey. It's about the entire portion of the amenities that Iron Trail Motors gets in conjunction with this agreement. They're not only paying the $1.1 million over time, they also have some amenities that are included in there. We also have some exclusive advertising agreements with Coca-Cola. We have advertising agreements with Iron Trail Motors Event Center, and their names have to be on these cups. But we have a negotiated contract with Coca-Cola to have their logo on there, and we've addressed that issue. But so there's a lot of things that go on about advertising that's probably going to be part of a conversation. For me, I don't have an issue with any of those things because I think we've been able to resolve that. And I believe Iron Trail Motors, with all due respect, has been patient. They have been, to some degree, flexible. Not very, to this point, but some degree flexible. And so when we ask for these two items that you're talking about today, those are two major items that, that needs to be, we need to articulate that what we want, how we want it done, and for Iron Trail Motors to have the ability to, we have to find a way in which to communicate in a manner that's might be amenable to open up that conversation with them. Councilor Paulson.
Thank you. And with that being said, what Brian is, I think, stating is that the only remedy then is to lower the price. I mean, that's what the contract basically states, is a remedy that if we don't cure it, you have to cure it within 30 days or give it 60 days or whatever it's stated in there. And if it's not cured, then what is the remedy?
Brian?
Thank you, Mayor. If we're talking specifically about the home, naming Rock Ridge's home arena as the Iron Trail, yes, that is the remedy provided by the contract, is that they could renegotiate the price.
Okay, and if that were the case, and I don't know if we're supposed to have this long-winded conversation today, but I'm just going to flat out state that I would want to void the entire contract if that's the case. Because $4,000 a month coming in for all of those regulations and restrictions is not, in my opinion, a good deal for the city of Virginia to follow under those very strict guidelines. So if that's the only remedy that that Iron Trail would have if the city of Virginia is in breach of this contract, I am not comfortable with that in any way, shape, or form.
We have the ability to, part of that contract gives us the authority to, if it has an adverse effect on the ability to operate the facility, and we show that it's having a adverse effect on our ability to operate the facility, establish a revenue stream, we can take steps to sever the contract. Is that correct, Brian?
There is a certain provision contained within Section 9E that talks about conduct by either party that would damage the reputation of the other party to the contract. And so
the question is define damaged reputation, right?
If I might.
Councilor Freely?
I think that, conversations obviously need to be had with the management of, I think you would hope they would be reasonable and objective in their views, but there's, we should be appreciative of the fact that they wanted to have the naming rights and provide $1.1 million of revenue to the city of Virginia on behalf. So it was kind of a mutually beneficial arrangement, but there's an imbalance that occurred when you really start looking at what other things were put into that contract, that we kind of had stars in our eyes at the time, like, let's sign off on this because this sounds great. But the truth is, they've got their name on the building, they've got their name on the ice, they are being marketed significantly, and I think they need to realize that the imbalance that's been created by that clause there that's exclusive advertising needs to be redone. And I think that conversation should and could be had with the management at Iron Trail Motors. I don't know that we have to completely pull the rug out from the naming rights contract that we have with them. We've established that, and their name's on the building. But they need to be reasonable in terms of like how that's negatively impacting our city right now in terms of what revenue we could be raising for programs and other sponsorships within the community that have for the last 40 years provided monies and revenue to the city of Virginia or programs in the city of Virginia. So I think it's a good thing. It's been mutually beneficial, but there are parts of that contract that need to be rediscussed and revised so that we have sole discretion to determine as a city what goes up on the wall and what doesn't. Because I just don't think anything that would go up on the wall in such a small market as this is going to be that impacting on their revenue for their advertising. So I just don't want to start from scratch. I don't think it's necessary. I think there's conversations that could be had, and hopefully they would see that it's benefiting them, but it's an imbalance to us right now.
And we don't know if they're amenable to that until we have that discussion, right? Councilor Johnson? Motion is still on the floor as stated, so Councilor Johnson.
Thank you. I really, to be specific, it is that 2C and the verbiage in there about the city agrees with that with respect to all events that are scheduled or hosted at the facilities unless approved in writing by Iron Trail, no company competing with Iron Trail should be allowed to sponsor any kind of such event. And what we're finding, and I'm going to go back to the jerseys because that's the email we got. That is, the jerseys aren't affixed to anything. They're a private company doing it. But I think the challenge comes from they think, it seems that Iron Trail thinks they have some sort of authority to regulate that. And if anything, that needs to be clarified. I also, FOR says nothing here and shall prevent a competitor from hosting a private event through rental, provided that it's non-commercial or non-promotional. Well, how do you hold a Christmas party without advertising that it's Washke's family's Christmas party? Like, I think we are losing revenue. I think we are losing events because of the fear of getting in trouble. That if someone puts on their poster, they are Bob's Auto Salvage or a Bob's, small business repair, and they want to sponsor something, they can't because they are a direct competitor with the service at Iron Trail. And I think that's the kind of thing that we specifically need to address. And again, the boards, maybe a pair of Jacks wants to be a hockey sponsor, but they can't. So to be that's where I'm at specifically when it comes to the language is it's so generic and broad that people just aren't stepping up. And the whole point was this to be a community, and I can't understand why a large company wouldn't want their name associated with, Bob's Auto Salvage is holding their event at the Iron Trail Motors Event Center. That's more advertisement that they're not paying for because their name is out there. So I just would want to make sure that if we're going to move forward, that whoever we send to have the discussion is authorized, drop dead authorized, and whoever they send is authorized. That the right people are having a conversation about how we're going to move forward with this, because it's very frustrating, and it wasn't, the point was to bring in some revenue, but it's negligible for us, and I'm sure it's almost nothing for them as well with the corporation in general. So like I said, I'm fine with if we have a direction and we know what we're doing, then if we vote and we vote no, that's just fine. But at least we're doing something today to move this forward, and that's my goal and intention. Thank you.
Well, from the discussions that we've had, it's clear that it's prudent for us to determine what changes we want to make, form a committee amongst our staff and council, give them the authority to make some proposals and adjustments and based upon what we want, and negotiate with their representatives or talk to their representatives about making these changes, and then come back with a recommendation. That just makes sense to do that. But the motion on the floor is to have our city attorney do some research and give us a determination what the next step is with respect to legality of meeting privately or publicly. So is there any further discussion before we vote on this motion? And I'm assuming there might be another one coming. Councilor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to know who proffered this contract. Was it Iron Trail Motors attorneys or was it the City of Virginia? Brian, Silber, did you get the contract given to you first, emailed to you, or was it emailed to you?
Mayor, if I may.
Brian?
Counselor, I created an original draft, and then it went over and was significantly revised by the attorneys from Iron Trail. So there's input from both. I made the original draft, and then it was updated.
And then do we have the original draft of what you created?
I'll look back to see. I should have it.
And then we can maybe compare what the language is that they added, and then go from there after you had time to give us a recommendation. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor Paulson. And that goes back to full circle into the motion that Councilor Johnson made. That's what we're asking our city attorney to do. So is there any other discussion with respect to that before we vote on the motion? Counselor Freely?
That obviously, as a group, when we voted in favor of them moving forward with this agreement, it was favorable at the time. And now we've come to realize that it's not entirely favorable in a mutually beneficial way. And there's an imbalance that needs to be addressed. And that discussion needs to happen.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to be voting on the next step to have our city attorney take a look at what the next step is. And part of that next step is to make a recommendation, provide that original draft document to us so we can review it. And once we do that, come to a consensus, maybe establish a recommendation of a committee moving forward to discuss those issues that we have concerns about in the contract with Iron Trail Motors Event Center. Counselor Beyondich.
Thank you. And I will speak just for myself. I voted on this contract with the verbal, when we were told verbally that the games would all be played here. Had I had the information that that was not finalized and that may not happen, I would have voted differently. So that one paragraph for me, when we were assured that games would be played in this arena, I was okay with it. But finding out that we still don't know, that part of it, I would never have voted for. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Beyondich.
Can I
So we have we have the motion in place to have our city attorney take a look at this and come back with a recommendation. Give us the draft document so we can talk about what the draft was. Look at that. Compare that with the original agreement, and then determine what we want to do, what amendments we want to make, or what discussion we make about what parts of the contract we want to discuss, and form a committee to do that and meet with Iron Trail Motors, which to accomplish that once we've have our goals and objectives coming forward for that particular meeting with the information provided by our city attorney. Is there any further discussion, Councilor Freely?
No. I was going to say, you know, what we're missing though is a lobbying group with regard to the school board. I mean, even that could include Iron Trail Motors personnel for that matter. I mean, somebody needs to speak to them in terms of what they're doing and whether or not it's making sense to what they're doing. So, you know, whether that's part and parcel of this, I don't know, but that's what we're missing. A voice there that's like helping them see that they're disallowing kids from having an opportunity to play in a $38 million building exclusively and call it their home. So anyhow, thanks.
Thank you, Councilor Freely. So we have some framework for you to provide for us, including that draft document prior to the final agreement. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Hearing and seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. 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 Opposed? Motion carries. We look forward to some more information as we discuss our strategies moving forward, sooner than later. Councilor Beyondich.
Thank you. And I'm veering off, and I apologize for doing this, but I do have one question. It's not about the contract, but I was asked recently, is our facility, the Iron Trail Motors Event Center, pet-friendly? And if we can or cannot bring our pets in there?
I believe this is our building, and so I don't believe we have or allow pets in there unless they're service dogs.
Only service animals.
Only service animals. Okay. Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you, Councilor Beyondich. Okay, next item.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is discuss vacant building issues in Virginia.
This was an issue that Councilor Beyondich asked to be put on the agenda. Councilor Beyondich.
Thank you. This was brought to my attention. We have some very good businesses that are investing in our downtown and expanding. And it was brought to my attention, have we ever looked at the safety and the welfare of the vacant buildings downtown? And I think a lot of people in the public assume they're city-owned buildings, which they are not. And are they a fire hazard? Are they a detriment to our downtown? And they based it off of what Duluth has also done with their downtown and the condition of their buildings. So I just wanted to bring it forward to start a discussion on how we are addressing or helping to make our downtown a little bit more appealing.
Okay. I think there are several efforts underway with Revive Virginia and others to try to get these vacant buildings sold. Trying to market them, this old building structure takes thousands, tens of thousands of dollars, how to remodel. Some people are making that investment. Cane Lakes is one prime example. We do have vacant buildings that are scheduled for demolition, and this is a good segue because the Norman's nightclub and the Frank's Bar is going to come down. There's a delay on the part of the county with respect to the contractor. Talking to 6th District Commissioner Keith Nelson, he'd indicated that they're going out for quotes, not bids, in 10 days and get somebody to come down and demolish that building. You can see they removed all the barricades, put the chain link fence up. So those two buildings are coming down. The other building is scheduled to come down is Hare on Main, which is next to the La Cocina. We've already torn down the one at Mansell's Range Music. So we have done some things on the main street in order to help prevent the hazards and the safety to the public. But it's the private buildings downtown that are vacant. And so you have, there are some ordinances that have been established that says if your building is vacant for more than 6 months, that TikTok, you have to start paying a fine for that. And then part of that is also the store frontage part of that ordinance, where you have to maintain an aesthetically pleasing storefront moving forward and maintain your sidewalk. All those things are a part of a vacant building ordinance. And so we do need some improvements to the downtown area. We are frustrated by that, but I know Britt has been working diligently through Revive Virginia, through the city, to try to get these buildings sold and try to get some more investment in our business committee. But it's tough when you have a building that's valued at $40,000 and you need $100,000 to make an investment in there. It's hard to attract people in which to do that, unless you can find a developer that do an entire block at one time. But those are just my thoughts. Councilor Paulson.
Mayor, I guess what I'd like to ask is, does the IRRB have any new visions at all with downtown or Main Street, or have they, I know Ida probably is just going to be taking her position, but has there been any indication from the IRRB that they will invest in Main Street projects?
I have spoke with Whitney Ridlon, who is the manager of the downtown programs.
Yep.
And she had indicated that they do intend to keep putting money into those programs. So the reason she came to talk to me was to ask how much we needed, so that when she sets her budget, she has kind of an idea what the cities in the Taconite Relief area are looking for. So I told her we have full intent to keep going forward with the dollar amount we've been doing, which is, we always ask for 250. That fluctuates with what they have available. But I told her we fully intend to keep moving forward on our side with BETA, and that we want them to participate as well. So I do think it's still part of a renovation. Maya brings up a good point. When John Sullivan was here, his very first week, he contacted every single vacant building owner downtown, and none of them called him back. And I did the same when I first started 6 years ago too, and they see the word city and a lot of people get really put off, and it's very difficult for us to get them. We do know that they are all privately held. None of them are vacant. The only ones that are not privately held are the Franks and Normans, which the county owns, will be coming down very shortly.
So the follow-up to that is, I know we had talked in the past, I think even as far back as when the Humphrey students came, about doing a business registry. Do we do that? And
Yes, that is a fire code related thing, and yes, they are required to register the business. A couple of the vacant buildings downtown that I know of personally are listed as storage. They're not using it as a business registry, it's listing it as storage, and storage is an approved use in a commercial district.
it is an approved
It is an
use.
approved use.
And so if that language were changed, that would be grandfathered in no matter what?
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
unfortunately.
Okay, so I'm kind of tracking on where you are. I think it's really important that we try to develop a plan, and I really appreciate Revive. They've done a great job, but, and now I guess I'm back on Vita, so we'll see. But I just wanted to understand if IRRB really is going to focus on that.
That's their intent, so hopefully they can keep it in the budget for, their budget cycle starts in July 1, and hopefully they can keep it in there.
Okay, thank you, and thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor Paulson. I think we're all frustrated, as you are, about bringing this up. I mean, if you buy a building in the downtown and your intent is to put a business in there or to develop that, and then you buy the building for $20,000 for that building, as an example, when, another party was gonna offer 40,000, but no, we're not gonna sell it to you, I'm gonna hold it, and then all of a sudden they sell it for 20,000. Person buys it because it's reasonably priced and does nothing with that. There has to be some way, I mean, like almost selling a home, and I'm sure it's probably a legal issue, maybe not even legal, but it's like selling it when you're buying a piece of property, and you gotta build on that property within 18 months. Same thing, you buy a building downtown, it's in a business district, you have to put a business in there within 18 months, or come up with a plan when you're gonna have that done, and show a plan that you're moving forward. Otherwise, we can, and if we had an ordinance, we could say, if you don't build within that period of time, we'll start fining you every month. I mean, is that feasible, Brian?
Thank you, Mayor. There are a couple ways to do it. One way would be something along those lines. The other would be to insert basically what's a development agreement with a reverter clause, that if you buy a building from the city and you don't do anything with it, we could take it back. But yeah, if it's a sale between private parties, we could have something in the books to that effect.
Okay, thank you. Please continue, Councilor Babianich.
So is there an ordinance of any sort in the city addressing the buildings downtown?
Not specific buildings downtown. There is vacant, we have vacant building registration. We have the business registration. We have building code, of course. We have the fire code. And unfortunately, a few that I think I know that you're talking about have been inspected, and they're approved for the use that they're using them for.
Do we have a storefront ordinance?
We do not.
So we give storefront loans, but but we don't have a storefront ordinance to say what kind of storefronts you can have.
Correct, but zoning ordinances, any kind of zoning ordinances cannot go backwards.
the
They're all
Knox-
grandfathered in the way they
Knox
are
box.
at the time that the ordinance passes.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Beyondich.
So the buildings that are down there, are they all registered? Are they all up to date on what they
I have
need
to
to
look
be
at
doing?
the registry, but yes, they were as of last year.
So we need to follow up and make sure, because here we're looking at a rental code ordinance, but I'm afraid that we keep passing ordinances and we forget about the ones that are there and they fall through the cracks.
And annually, we do send out the vacant building registration. Are you still vacant? And so we do update that annually.
Okay.
I know the fire marshal just mentioned to me the business renovation, the business registry, he was working on the next wave. Remember, we talked about doing that over a period of time. He was working on the next wave where he was going to go next. So
Can we ask them what their plans are with their building?
they don't have to tell us, but yes, we can.
You could ask them, right?
We can ask, yes.
Councilor
And
Beyondich.
like I said, mentioned, two of the owners that I know that we have contacted and talked to, there's storage, that's their plan, is just to use it as storage.
Well, some of that verges way over on blight. I mean, when you have trees growing out of the storefronts,
Yes.
there is blight.
Yep.
And I think, I have the information from what Duluth has done, and I think it's something that we really need to start. Our downtown is not inviting. I'm glad that people that are there are improving and expanding, and I'm hoping that's a start. But we have buildings that have sat the way they are for years, and it is not going to attract somebody to come down and open a business. So I wanted it on the agenda, and I think when we hit the ground with VITA, I think we need to start working on our downtown. Thank you.
Thank you. And with respect to the blight, real quick, I mean, if a building's blighted, we can take action. We have a blight ordinance. We can make them do something there. We can enforce the ordinance
Enforce the ordinance, yes.
in which to do that. Thank you very much.
Private buildings, we can't, unless we have eminent domain, then we can't just take them and
Right. I meant to enforce the ordinance.
replant the tree someplace else.
Decorate the tree.
Okay. Yeah, I hope we can take this on, but thanks for bringing this up. Well, I'm sure it was more further discussion.
Hopefully our new community development planner or coordinator will have some really good ideas. We can-
Yeah, interviews tomorrow. And you still can't make it?
For the sales and marketing, yeah, that's tomorrow.
I was given the opportunity for an appointment that I have
Oh, okay.
severely put off that I need to take care of.
Okay,
so-
and they're bringing in the right
Thank
hander
you.
then to help you out. Okay, all right. Next batter.
Thank you. The final matter is discuss the purchase of real estate in Virginia, and this portion of the meeting may be closed per Minnesota statute 13D05 subdivision 3.
Is that your recommendation that we close?
I don't feel we have to. This is the purchase of a property in the Public Safety Center area. It's on Second Avenue. It's a vacant property. There's no relocation cost.
Okay, very good. Okay, look for a motion. Okay. Looking for a motion to purchase this property. Did everybody have a chance to take a look at it?
Reference, this is Dale Poppenhagen's house. It is condemned as well.
Yeah, yeah.
That's the price the reason the price is very, very low compared to the other ones we've purchased.
Right in-
1006 Second Avenue South.
Right in the middle.
It's one of the houses face the Second Avenue, and that little stretch next to the former Northern Ornamental.
A few doors down from the North Ornamental, yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Move to approve by Counselor, were you going to move to approve?
Kim,
I
I'll
should look
support.
first. Okay, moved by Counselor Freely, supported by Counselor Beyondich. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Aye, opposed, motion carries. Anything else, Britt? I just have one thing, real quick, I'd like to ask of us to consider. I got approached by the Veterans Organization yesterday at their meeting. There was a swearing in of Commissioner Keith Nelson for his new seat. And so we were there for that in a meeting. They asked me once again to bring up to the city council for consideration moving forward, to make some discussion at some time about making an adjustment to their garbage rates as a nonprofit. I don't know what the rating system is. I would ask that you take a look at it. I do have a copy of our garbage bill, which was said to, they pay $160 a month for a garbage can, a shared garbage can. So I don't know how that works, but I just thought I brought it up and just take a look at it.
They need to contact Public Works. Public Works determines the garbage rates based on the pickup,
Right.
and they have not done that yet.
No, they have not.
They need
They
to do
came
that.
to me first.
Yeah, they need to contact.
I will
Public
direct
Works.
them to Public Works. Thank you, Britt. All right, thank you. Anything else that anybody has that comes before the committee of the whole meeting today? Once again, welcome to the city council, Liz, Councilor Motley, and we look forward to working with you. As you see, this was one long meeting. They don't normally last this long, but there's some good discussion. So thank you very much, everybody, for taking the time today, and we will stand adjourned to our next council meeting, which is next Tuesday. We stand adjourned at 12:07 p.m. Thank you.